Welcome back to the Unbound podcast. Today's guest is Ricardo Aviles. Ricardo was born in Puerto Rico. He eventually joined the military and he became an interpreter. This conversation was fascinating to me. I started this podcast because I wanted to bring people in and have conversations about interesting things to me, and some of that's subjects that I don't know a lot about. I've only had to work with an interpreter once in my time in law enforcement, and it's pretty fascinating to learn from Rico the different elements like legal issues and everything, some that are very concerning, some that a lot of places still aren't applying as they legally have to. So that was interesting. And we talked about trafficking and ways to spot victims of trafficking, and other big concerns too of like who are the dangerous people. And we're always taught stranger danger and things of that sort. And Rico focused more on, no, it's tricky people. And I love that point, and we'll dive into that in this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this one as much as I did. Without further ado, here we go. So if you don't want on it, don't say it. Whatever you want to say, this is free for all. And dark grit, all that stuff, like if there's podcasts you feel like you can't share it on, this one definitely. And you're talking to a crowd that's usually wanting that. They're going to connect with the darker stuff better too.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
So we can dive into any of that.
I always try to be, it's all the same, man.
Yeah.
As you heard with Mireya's very conservative
when
it comes to that. And I think she bleeped, when I said a bad word, I can't remember what she bleeped out.
Yeah. She let some fly and then bleeped some.
Yeah, she let some fly and let some, yeah. So that's why I was like, And I mess with her too. Like, I like messing with people too. Like, I'll say something like outlandish just to get a laugh. Yeah. And with Mireya, you can tell, like, she's,
yeah. I was listening to podcasts last night. Theo Vaughn had Post Malone on, and randomly, like 45 minutes to an hour in, they start doing an audible bleep noise over F words that Post was dropping after both of them had been cut. So I don't know.
Bad post-editing, probably.
It was weird. It was almost like they were cutting something for a short and editing it for the short and then forgot and left it in the full cut. But I was like, that's odd. But it's super distracting when all of a sudden in the middle you start hearing the beeps.
Like, I thought this was America. Like, what the fuck? Yeah, no. That happens, man. It's bad post-editing sometimes. Other times it's just, I don't know. There could be a million things that I could come up with why people do that.
You got a notebook. Why do you carry a notebook?
That's a great question. Most people never ask. So I have a notebook basically where I pick words that I don't know in like a certain language. And then I also, if I have like a bit for a joke or something, I'll have it. So this is like an all-around notebook. And then if there's something that I like I don't know, like, hey, I don't remember this, like I'll make a note and whatnot. Like I like to keep track of it. That's what you're saying about notes. Like, notes are important. Like I always like research the guest and do like a little background check, a little bit more official sometimes depending on who it is, and that's where note keeping is great. Plus, when you have so many things that you're doing, like it's good to keep track of like a to-do list. Like I've already finished my list for today and my workouts and all that other shit. So I always like to have like I normally carry a little black notebook with me when I'm at work, but that's for like when I'm at work. I have like a little black notebook with me where I type in dates and stuff.
I used to carry a little black, I think it's Moleskine that made them, little tiny notebook and a pen. And because something about that handwritten to-do list was easier to monitor than using what the phone has.
It works. It works for some people. Like I use my phone for notes and like writing and stuff.
Yep.
But writing it down, like especially for work, like I have so many things that happen that I like to keep track of. Yeah. That I have, like I've always had that. I learned that in the Army. Just keep a little black notebook with you. Something happens, who, what, when, where, how, why, and then who was around, how many people were around, what were they wearing, shit like that. Yeah. Because you never know, man. I've been in situations where like somebody says something, I'm like, let me check that. Yeah. Nah, on this date, that's not true.
I've been big on that, especially in law enforcement, taking those notes. And I remember, dude, it was weird, but I lived in Los Angeles and I worked as a cop for a tiny town here. I flew home. Allegiant does direct flights. So I'd fly here every 2 months. I'd work 4 days in a row and then I'd fly back so I could hold that reserve commission, which gave me carry rights for protection work out in LA.
Nice.
And but this little town, man, it was crazy. Just weird stuff all the time. And
In what sense? What do you mean by weird? Like,
just everything was done differently. When you do a traffic stop, there's a 70% chance the person would get out of the car and approach your vehicle. That's not normal. But apparently, years ago, that's how things were done. And there's still, but they just get out, and you don't do that. So, and you hop out screaming at someone, get back in the car, and they're wondering why you've drawn a gun.
Yeah, I've been around law enforcement and attorneys and legalese my whole life because my parents work in that field.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was a cop for 30 years, and my mom still works for the courts. So we've always had attorneys around, and I've heard shit like ever since I was little that I'm like, yeah, so that like shocks me that you would just get out on a traffic stop like.
Yeah, so you'd have odd things like that and just different run-ins with people. But I remember this one guy, I pull him over, and our dispatchers ended up ringing my phone, and they're like, dude, he literally just got out of jail. So I'm already pulling this guy over. And I see on his insurance he provides me, excluded drivers. And here's my memory. Excluded drivers, Jimmy Tyndall was on his mom's insurance. So he's not provided me insurance. And the reason why is probably because of DWI in the past and his insurance, whatever the expensive stuff is. And so, I ended up citing him because he's driving without insurance. And the mayor, tiny town, the mayor calls me. And this guy tells me he showed you insurance. I was like, well, it's funny. I take really good notes, and my notes are so thorough. I took a photo. I'll swing by your house. Yep. So I met him at his house, and we're in his shop outside in his backyard, getting small town type of politics and everything. And I show him that picture, and he's like, huh, well, I guess that settles that. But just that right there. And I used to run my audio recorder on my phone every now and then on calls. Because we didn't have, this is before body cams and everything. I'd have that in my shirt pocket.
Because you never know.
Yeah. And an iPhone in your shirt pocket can hear everything.
Yep.
And oh my gosh, that saved me 3 or 4 times just at that department alone.
Yep. And the beauty about Missouri is that it's a one-party consent state. As long as it's not within your expected privacy. But like, I tell people all the time, like when I'm talking to them, like, you expect privacy at your home. That's it. That's the only way legally that it can cover it. And even then, bro, like, you just gotta be careful. There's an old saying back home: "Tú eres dueño de lo que callas y esclavo de lo que dices." You are owner of what you don't say, and you're a slave of what you say. So that's why it's like I'm always like, let me write that down. Let me write shit down, because you never know, man. People like to play tricks and make shit up all the time too in today's society, and now with AI too, like it's even fucking crazier, So it's good to have a notebook.
Well, let's jump into your life, starting out childhood, things that shaped you and made you who we are today.
Oh God.
For fun, exciting stories. Obviously, you grew up in a different place.
I was thrown in a volcano, and when I came out, I had God of War powers, and I could speak multiple languages, and I was just this badass.
Hell yeah.
That's how it happened.
Nice.
No, I'm kidding. That's a horrible origin story. I always say my origin story is really boring because I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. I am a product of parents from divorce, obviously. My mom left when I was really young, and then I ended up staying with my dad. And I pretty much grew up with my stepmom. Like, that's mommy to me,
Mm-hmm.
But growing up in Puerto Rico was very different, obviously, than you would consider living in the continental U.S.
Right.
So that pretty much is like my beginning, as to say, was I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. My parents were real strict. Dad always was like, hey, you got to learn English. And by God, thank God he did, because we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. But other than that, man, like, not much really interesting. I was always a nerdy kid, into anime, played a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh, more than I think I should care for. And to this day, I still do. So I guess I've never grown up. But that's pretty much my origin. Was growing up in Puerto Rico was very different. Obviously, compared to like other people who've grown up in the continental U.S. I'm in an island that's 100 by 2 by 36, I believe. So that itself has it's different ups and downs, if that makes any sense, But that's pretty much my origin story, man. Like, I grew up in Puerto Rico and just...
What made it different to you? Like, some of the specifics?
Well, Puerto Rico, number one, is a territory of the United States. And what most people don't understand is that it was taken over in 1898, but it wasn't given sovereignty until the 1900s because we took it from the Spaniards. And what most people don't understand is Puerto Ricans technically have dual citizenship. So, like, that's a thing. But for Americans, because you own it, you know, we're all Americans here. Like, I just use that term very loosely. You guys can come and go as you please. So one of the different things is, number one, the language. The primary language is not English. The primary language is Spanish. So everybody speaks Spanish. Everybody understands English, but not everybody uses it. Obviously, if you move to like a bigger city and stuff like San Juan, Ponce, you know, Mayagüez and stuff like that, which these are all localities, municipalities, so to speak, people are more likely to hear it because it's like the touristy area.
Right.
But, you know, man, growing up, like, obviously we didn't have technology and phones, you know, like most of y'all. We didn't have, you know, I didn't grow up in that phase of texting and shit like that. I grew up really simple. Like, if you wanted to cut class, you'd go play Yu-Gi-Oh! Or you go to the beach. Like, that was it. Like, and the beach is everywhere. Going to high school was different, too, especially when your dad's a cop. Because everybody knows who the fuck my dad was. Everybody. It's really difficult to get away with doing shit when your dad's a cop. So that's pretty much like the biggest difference is the education is very different because it's in another language. So for you, you could probably tell me two books that you grew up reading, which was Moby Dick probably, and The Scarlet Letter, right? Or
I do remember that one.
The Black Widow, right?
Right.
So I didn't grow up with that. We grew up reading and doing reading comprehension analysis of Don Quixote, which if you've never read Don Quixote, it's a great book, but you got to read it twice. I always tell this to people. Read Don Quixote the first time from like a child's perspective. The second time you read it from the perspective as someone who is looking at a man who has a maniac disorder. Because that was what we learned from Don Quixote is like, just because someone's doing something out of like weird, so to speak, doesn't mean that they're necessarily dangerous.
Right.
They're just different and they have issues, but doesn't necessarily mean that they're a danger to you or others. So that's what you get out of Don Quixote. And then we had a book called Doña Bárbara, which was called Doña Bárbara la Devoradora de Hombres. Devoradora de Hombres. It was Doña Bárbara, the man-eater, basically. And it was a woman who, if I recall correctly, it's been so long, it was a woman who was like a slave or something, and she started sleeping with all these dudes. And these dudes would die, and they would leave her everything. And then she just kept growing her empire like that and growing. And it's a really weird book to give to a third and fourth grader. But yeah, it's little differences like that. And in Puerto Rico also we have business high schools, or like we call them comercio high schools, commercial high schools, which basically what you do is you have to be in a team of some sorts. Like I was part of FBLA. And you have to like be a part of that, and you have to actively participate. You have to keep a certain GPA above higher than all the other schools. And then you get taught business, like life skills. And then for me, that's where I started like getting trained as a translator and interpreter. That was like my start sort of like in my interpreter origin side of things. Yeah. But that's how things are different. It's like, imagine like not ever learning about history itself. Like, that wasn't something that they taught really in school. That's wild. Yeah, so it's like you come to the States and it's like culture shock. It's like my wife and I, we recently went with my kid, with our kid, and it was like my wife was like, "Oh, this is different. Like this is really different. Like you can tell even like on the road and everywhere, like it's night and day." And she loved it, so we'll be going back there to see my parents, and my parents can see my kiddo and stuff like that. That's cool. Yeah, but hopefully that clarifies that part of that, how different it is. Yeah, just imagine if you had the beach at all times. Like literally, you just get on a horse and just go to the beach, and then you just let the horse go. When I used to live in Los Angeles, and when I first got there, the beach probably at least twice a week. Yeah. But eventually, once you've been there, you realize it's been 2.5, 3 months since I'm taking it for granted. I got to go to the beach. Yeah, you take it for granted for sure. And like the other thing is that people don't understand the damage that salt does. Like you think you guys have it bad with the salt and the snow. Like imagine having salt all the fucking time. Yeah. That's why everything is made in cement in Puerto Rico. Number one, obviously, sand is easily accessible. Number two, it's more durable for hurricanes and stuff like that. So that's one of the reasons why when I came to the States, I was like, y'all build this shit in plywood and wood? Like,
Right.
what is this? And then a friend of mine was explaining to me, like, hey, dumbass, economics, like, where are we going to get the sand? I'm like, oh, yeah, that's true. Like, you can't, you have to, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So those are little things that you really, like, take for granted. The nice thing is every home almost every home in the States has central AC. That's
Right.
not a thing. That's not a thing that you see houses in Puerto Rico.
Oh,
bro.
man. That's got to be rough.
You get used to it. I mean, like anything, you know, you grow up around it, you get used to it, and if not, you just go to the beach, go cool down at the beach. Like that's, you know, there's give and takes. You know, you obviously gotta eat differently. You have to drink more water. The rum is great. Obviously, it's an island, so it's a different way of living. Not a way that I greatly like would want to go back to, but it's a different way of living, so to speak, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. When you're talking about the salt and everything, being rough on things, just my experiences in going to Florida, it's crazy seeing the signs of erosion from being next to the water.
In houses.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you'll see stuff that's new or the signs aren't there yet, but then you see these buildings that have been there since the 60s or
Yep.
70s, and you know they've gone through numerous renovations,
Yep.
and it's insane just how a sliding door works on a balcony,
Yeah.
even 7 stories in the air, and it's still getting its ass kicked.
Yep, that's the thing. Roofs too, like
Yeah.
roofs. You know, you got to watch out for your roofs too, and like drainage and whatnot, because you get hit in a hurricane season, bro, and it fucking takes you back. You know, and unfortunately, you know, Puerto Rico has a lot of other issues when it comes to like, you know, electricity, water, power, food, you know, socioeconomic stuff. Like there's so many things that Puerto Rico has an issue with, that they've always had an issue with ever since I've been, you know, ever since I was a little kid, that it just really makes you wonder, like, why? And it's just something that's always been like that. I mean, hurricane season, I joke that it's 13 months out of the 12 months, but in reality, it's like 4 or 5 months, you know?
Right.
But it's rough, man. It's rough. Like it's rough to build something there.
What are some of the industries that Puerto Rico is known for? Do you know
Nowadays?
things? Yeah.
Or like back
what?
in the day?
Well, either.
So back in the day, I believe it used to be pharmacy, like pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
I think nowadays, and I'm not 100%, I think it's technology is what's emerging.
Okay.
It's technology and medical stuff.
I do remember in the big hurricane 5-7 years ago, there was something where there was a shortage that was medical industry related. I don't remember what it was, but 80% of the world's supply was coming from Puerto Rico. And I don't remember what it was. And it was like, well, how are we not thinking about stuff like this? It's kind of like America's reliance on China,
Yeah.
you know, for things
Well,
too.
the thing is like, I always say this, and I say this very, very nicely. America treats Puerto Rico kind of like the redheaded stepchild.
I can see that.
You know, you have the Jones Act, which if you don't know what the Jones Act is, go research that great piece of legislation, which, you know, for you to import and export something, it's ridiculous. And I have yet to get an attorney on my show where I can say, hey, like, explain to me the Jones Act, why this makes sense. The other problem is Puerto Ricans a lot of times self-destruct themselves, because it's like you have 3 sides. You have people who want Puerto Rico to be independent because they're like, no, technically we didn't belong to anybody. You know, the Spaniards came here, killed the Taínos, which is the name of the indigenous people. And then the Americans came, and then they militarized us for 2 years, from 98 to 1900. And then they gave us like this false hope of like, and this is what people say, it's not what I think. This false hope of like, yeah, you guys can be independent. But then for the last 100 years, you know, there's been gag laws and shit after shit after shit, where the Puerto Rican people have made numerous contributions, you know. And the beautiful thing about being Puerto Rican is you can just go to the States. You can join the military, pack all your shit, leave the island with a backpack that has all your information, a set of pants and shoes that barely fit you, and a nice shirt, and you can just go ahead and leave. You know, that's one of the beauties of it. But to grow in Puerto Rico, it's very difficult. It's very difficult. And a lot of times it's also because the focus that you have from the island and the growth doesn't come from within. It comes from outside. So it's really difficult for people to just accept, like, well, if you want change, a lot of times the change has to come from within. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And like that's a problem too. You know, you look at the Puerto Rican debt, and you know, what are we doing with that? But yet every so often, which I'm old enough now to remember, like, we're gonna make Puerto Rico a state. We're gonna make Puerto Rico a state. Well, if you make Puerto Rico a state, that means that number one, they can vote for the president, which Puerto Ricans are not allowed to vote for the president. It's literally taxation without representation, because we don't have representatives on the Senate either.
That's
or on the
interesting.
Senate or whatever the fuck it is. I can't remember right now what it is. But they don't have like a representation. So it's like, how do you expect for problems to be solved if you're not listening? You know what I'm saying? It's all like this
Well, and they
fantasy.
don't listen to us here either. Which it's easy to understand. I get it. It's like,
But you don't have the beach that you can go to and just numb yourself with some
Right.
rum and just sit back on the beach and look at big booty Latinas, you know? It's just, I'm telling you, man, there's something about rum, the beach, and the big booty Latinas that just people go, fuck it. Like,
are there tax benefits to living on the island for, say, someone who's like one of the big Bitcoin guys or whatever? Is that a place that they move to?
I wouldn't be able to tell you, in all honesty, if there's a tax benefit, but I can tell you this. There's a lot of businesses that go there that get, I would assume the reason you move a business to Puerto Rico is for some sort of advantage or whatever variable you want to insert in here that's going to help your business.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the Paul brothers. They have a gym in Puerto Rico and stuff like that. You know, the beautiful thing about Puerto Rico is you can train year long because it doesn't drop below 67.
Yeah.
So if you have an environment like that, bro, and you're an athlete, more power to you, you know? But when it comes to the taxation of businesses, I don't really have a good understanding where I could sit here and say, yes, if you go to Puerto Rico, you get 100% tax-free for 22 years, you know? No clue whatsoever. But I do know that tourism is one of the things that used to drive Puerto Rico back in the day. And obviously after Maria and all these other hurricanes, like, it's been nearly impossible, you know? COVID,
man, yeah.
COVID also killed that too, and all this other stuff. So, you know, promoting tourism, I would assume, was very difficult after all those constant hits, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what got you up here to the mainland?
Oh, man. I like white women. First of all, I said it on Vic's interview, and he laughed, and I think he thought I was joking. And when my wife and my friends saw that interview, they're like, really? I would have never been able to tell. I'm like, have you met my wife? Like it could not be more Midwestern girl, you know? I got over here because of the Army. Like, I didn't feel, there's just, like, again, there's not much opportunity to grow in Puerto Rico. You have a few paths. You know, you can go the comedic route or the entertainment route, which, you know, as you know how the entertainment industry is everywhere. It's a bitch to get in, you know.
Yeah.
You can go work for the government, you know, law enforcement, the courts. Schools are great in Puerto Rico, and they're pretty damn affordable, at least back when I was in. But other than that, like, for me, it was just none of those things that I wanted to pursue. So I ended up joining the Army as an MP. Like, I followed my grandfather's steps. So that's what got me out of the island into the continental U.S.
So did you meet a recruiter and stuff in Puerto Rico?
Yeah, actually, the way I met the recruiter was really weird because I had been homeless for a little bit, and my grandparents ended up picking me off the streets and whatnot. And my grandfather was like, you got to do something, like, fix your fucking life, pretty much. And he's like, you got to do something meaningful, productive, and that you'll be able to look back and go, okay, this gave me, like, a foundation.
Yeah.
So pretty much one day I was out, and I was out and about walking, and it's hot as shit, as you know. And some dude pulled up. He's like, hey, man, do you need a ride? And I'm like, the worst that happens is I get raped or kidnapped. Like, at this point, I just don't care. Like, think about the low level that you have to be where you're like, I just don't give a fuck.
So then that's where you were at.
That's where I was at.
Wow.
Because it's like, well, you know, like, I spoke multiple languages. I had this data entry clerk certification. I had work jobs, but my dad wanted me to follow a certain path, and we just clashed heads. And it's, like, really difficult when everybody knows who the fuck your dad is.
Right. Was he wanting you to do law enforcement too, or something else?
He wanted me to go to school. And I didn't understand the concept of going to school because I didn't really understand. What I wanted to do wasn't something that was available. So the next big step, what I wanted to do was I wanted to create video game stories. That's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to do like something with graphics and video games. But that wasn't a thing back in the day. So what ended up happening was that I ended up dropping out of school, and we had our little powwow, and then my grandfather picks me up, and this is all within like a year. And then I meet the recruiter, and he goes, well, man, if you ever want a real job, after talking with the recruiter, just let me know. And then I dropped me off at my grandparents'. I went to bed that night, and I was just like, I just couldn't fucking sleep. Next morning, I woke up with my grandfather, and I go, hey, I think I want to go talk to the Army recruiter. Like, I want to go talk to. He's like, all right, don't tell your grandmother. So fucking went over there, started the process that day. And 6 months later, I was January 8th of 2008, I shipped out. And like everybody turned their back on me. Everybody.
Really?
Oh yeah. A lot of people don't recall that, but I recall that very vividly. Right. Like very vividly. Like, you're not gonna make it. Like, that's just really, you wanna go play Army? Like, we're at war, right? And I'm like, I'll fucking go to war. Like, anything will be better than just living in this fucking island, because there's just nothing. Like, for me at least, right? So I ended up joining the Army, and I left January 8, 2008, and reported to Fort Leonard Wood January 9 of 2009. And that was like my first like coming to the States, like to live, actually, because I had visited like Texas and Florida before. But you come for like a few weeks, and it's like, that's completely different.
So what did you think of landlocked Missouri in the middle of winter?
In what sense? Like when I first arrived, you mean? Well, there wasn't really much to think about, because to me it was like, I have to fucking do this. Yeah. Like there's no, oh, if this doesn't work, it's like, no, I'm a soldier now. This is what I am. I don't give a fuck what anybody says, because everybody's like, oh, that's dumb. Oh, vende patria, which means like you sold your country, which is stupid to me, because Puerto Ricans went to World War I, Puerto Ricans went to World War II, Puerto Ricans went to Vietnam, Puerto Ricans went to Grenada, Puerto Ricans went to Panama. How the fuck do you think we had interpreters? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So it was like one of those things that I was just really happy. Like, I left the island with a bag in my hand that had my military records. I had a pair of pants that didn't fit me, a pair of shoes that didn't fit me, and a pair of shorts. And I reported to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri in January in fucking shorts.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you laugh. I didn't laugh. You know what happens when you get out of that bus after they're screaming at you? What happens to a Puerto Rican dude? You turn Asian, bro. You're like you just pass the fuck out as soon as the cold hits you.
Like, that's your first experience.
That's my first experience at basic. Weather. Yeah, basic. Like, I got to basic, and I get out of the bus, and I couldn't breathe, because the air was so fucking thin. And I've never lived outside of Puerto Rico. Yeah. So it's like, imagine going from 60 to 100 all the time, 67 to 100 all the time, and all of a sudden it's 10, and you've never breathed, you've never like taken a breath of air when it's 10 fucking degrees. It's like trying to suck water through a straw. So I just passed out. That was like my first experience. And I woke up, and drill sergeant spoke Spanish. They're still yelling at me, and I'm like, I could have died.
So you actually really passed out from it?
No, I passed out. When I walked out so we got to Fort Leonard Wood on these buses that they were blacked out. We got to St. Louis Airport, got to the USO, and I was escorted the whole fucking time. They were like, hey, do not leave the USO. If you leave the fucking USO, we're shipping you back. We don't give a fuck. Stay here. And it was because of like the terrorist threat level, I guess. That's what we were told at the time. So then they take you down to this downstairs area. You don't see outside. Like, you leave the airport, and that's it. And the other great thing is, no one ever told me, like, why the fuck is this guy in shorts? And I get on the bus, and we get to Fort Leonard Wood to 43rd AG reception. And I get out of the bus, and like, as soon as I'm out of the bus, they're just screaming, get the fuck out of the bus right now, blah, blah, blah. This is when they could do that. And I got out, and I started like trying to breathe, and I couldn't breathe. And I'm trying to get to formation. I just fell face forward. And fucking woke up, and I'm inside of 43rd. Woke up, looked around, and said, you're okay. Drill sergeants are like getting me checked. And then he's like, get the fuck back in line, blah, 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 blah. And like, during that whole commotion, like, there's a drill sergeant that spoke Spanish. He goes, where are you from? I go, Puerto Rico. He's like, what part of New York? Fucking Puerto Rico. Like, Puerto Rico, the tiny little fucking island that you can't identify. I didn't say that. I said that in my head. I go to Puerto Rico. He goes, listen, man, it's going to be rough. And the best advice he gave me is like, every morning, just step out in shorts and just breathe the air as much as you can. The moment you start feeling like you're having a panic attack, just walk back in. And then the first week at 43rd, that's all I did. And then we started going on walks and marching, and you got to get shots, and you get your uniform, and then you have to take a physical test, and then all that shit, and then you report to basic. And by then, like after that week, like thank God I did that. I had kind of climatized. The cold weather still sucks to this day for me, but that was like my introduction to welcome. If my movie was to be made, it would be like Welcome to America, the Puerto Rican version.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like that's how that would like run out.
I feel like his advice is good, and I feel like I can relate in some ways. I used to work at the airport, and throwing bags, I could do it in a t-shirt in the middle of winter because you're in the weather all day.
Yeah,
you know. And it's crazy because like every now and then a cold day hits. I hate the cold. Absolutely hate it. I'll take 115 over anything below 30. And it was insane how you'd get used to that from being out there and working it and everything. And then now it's like, I'm like, gosh, I got to spend more time outside so this doesn't annoy me as much. And I used to smoke, and that was nice because when you're smoking, you're going outside. And then now the
cigarettes?
last 2 years, I've quit smoking, and now the winter is so much more brutal just because I really am not outside a whole lot.
Yeah, no, winter's gotten easier for me. I can put up with it nowadays. My skin is what suffers because my skin's just never been used to it. And like there's certain things like I have to have chapstick because if not, I'll literally part my lips. Like that's something.
Split.
My skin gets really, really, really dehydrated. That's why when Joseph was feeling me up, he's like, "What the fuck?" I'm like, "It's vitamin D, asshole." Because if you look at like my knuckles, obviously, and like my fingers are horrible, but if you look at my knuckles, like they're brown right now. This morning it was 52, and I went out for a run, and that's what happens just from going out on a run.
Wow.
So like my skin's just not used to it at all. I think that's part of like the black in me, probably. I don't know, something like that.
I never remember chapstick, but I have learned over the years to lick my lips before I yawn in cold weather. Because that yawn, that stretch, you'll split them wide open.
Depends on the location. You're licking your lips certain places. People are like, Yeah.
Making eye contact with somebody by accident.
Oh, I make hard. I just look at you and just widen my stance. I don't give a fuck. But yeah, that was like my introduction to moving here, man. And like to this day, it's like I don't think people really like when I talk to people, they're like, he's just so weird and goofy. It's like, yeah, motherfucker, but like life sucks. Life really sucks, and like everybody's life sucks, But like for me, it was just like to this day, I still have cultural shock with certain things. Shit, at jiu-jitsu, guys will, this was like an ongoing joke forever at jiu-jitsu. It was, Richard doesn't know movies. Like I hadn't seen, what was that movie? It was with Charlie Sheen, Hot Shots.
Okay, yeah.
Like I hadn't seen Hot Shots until I had surgery, where I was like, let's have a day and watch all of Charlie Sheen movies. And I watched Hot Shots, watched Seals, which was great. Watch all his old stuff, which I can't even fucking remember right now. And the Scary Movies one too. So like that's one of the things where it's like I just don't identify, because I can tell you who Gilberto Santa Rosa is. He's a salsa merengue musician. I can tell you who Don Francisco is. I can tell you who Huerta Mercado is. I can tell you who's one, Chavo del Ocho. We can talk about anime, because anime's huge in Hispanic countries. Huge. Back in the day, anime was dubbed in Spanish before it was dubbed in English.
Oh, interesting.
Well, think about that. Like Telemundo. Telemundo had the rights to Dragon Ball Z, to Pokemon, to Samurai X, to Knights of the Zodiac. And when was the first time that you saw Dragon Ball Z in America? 2005. 1998, when Toonami came out. Maybe 96, 95, some shit like that. But like when Toonami came out is when that all came like big. So that's one of the things like people don't get is like we had access to a lot of stuff like SNL. I didn't grow up watching SNL. I did a show with Kevin Farley. I didn't know who the fuck Kevin Farley was. I opened for Kevin Farley. You never heard of that story? That's a really popular story at Just for Him. Lee was Lee, who is one of the he's bless his heart, Lee is one of the guys. He had like a heart attack or something, and he was like a bartender, and he bartended. He's like, hey, I'll bartend for Kevin Farley, and it was the idea of this guy that I used to do comedy with, Leighton Flat, that he's like, hey, let's bring Kevin Farley, and I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll just fucking bring anybody. Like, I'll open for anybody. I'm just trying to get stage time at that point.
Where was this at?
In town.
Yeah.
In town. And sure as hell, man, he flies in and we go pick him up, and I'm in my Lexus and I'm sitting there and I'm like quiet, bro, because I'm like, I have no idea who this person is.
Yeah. I
didn't research them. I'm just like, this is some famous man that he has a famous family, and he was super nice. And Farley gets in the car, and Leighton Flat's in the car, and he's excited. He's like, man, I loved you in, I think it was Waterboy or some shit. I can't remember. Some sort of movie that he did with Adam Sandler and all these others. And I'm just quiet. And at some point during the conversation, Leighton goes like, yeah, Richard doesn't really know much about you. He's from Puerto Rico. And Kevin Farley starts talking to me. And at one point, he sees that I have Davidoff cigars in my middle thing. And he goes, you smoke cigars? I go, yeah, I smoke cigars. He goes, man, I love Avo and Ashfords. I go, when's the last time you smoked one? He's, oh, it's been a while. They don't have them very much in L.A., where I live. I was like, oh, give me a minute. I literally called Christian. I said, hey, I have Mr. Farley in the... Yeah, I'll give you a box. So he just gave me 5, and he's like, oh, man, that's really cool. I was, thank you. And I was like, yeah, no problem. And we start talking about my military service, and he goes, you serve in the sandbox? I go, yep, the 15 months. He goes, man, thank you for your service. Yeah, he goes, yeah, I know you guys don't like to say that, but I really mean that, especially because you got me those cigars. I'm like, thank you. And he goes, so what'd you do after the military? I go, I got out, pursued my GI Bill, and doing comedy now and doing interpreting and this and that. He goes, oh, man, you were never homeless in a van down by the river? And I go, nah, man, never, thank God. And he looks at me, he goes, I like you, Richard. And I get home and I tell my wife, I go, yeah, so this happened. Kevin Farley made a comment about a van down by the river. My wife just turns and she goes to YouTube and pulls up the Chris Farley video of like, you're going to live in a van down by the river. And bro, I was like, oh my God, I just got roasted by Kevin Farley and I didn't even realize it. So then we spent like all night like doing shows. We did 2 shows and he just spent smoking cigars with him, but no fucking clue who the fuck he was. I just learned how it was. And like, that's always been like awkward to me because there's like all this American culture, like entertainment and society that I'm like, still oblivious to that at this point, But during the Army tenure, like, you learn a lot about it, And then jiu-jitsu, like, the guys make fun of you. It's like, you've never seen, what was the other movie? There was some other movie. Goonies. I didn't see Goonies until, like, I think, like, 2022. I saw it for the first time.
That's one that I kind of missed. Like, I recognized the screenshots and everything, but it really wasn't part of my childhood.
Great movie.
It's not in my memories.
The one thing about that movie that sticks out is that I guess CPS was not a thing during that time. Because you got those kids running around, like, with this dude that looks good, like, yeah! Like, and they're just, like, the parents are like, yeah, fuck it, they're fine. And then the cops come over. If it would have been nowadays, CPS would have been like, you're under arrest. And these people are pirate chasers. They're heroes. They protected your kids. So, yeah, that movie, like, was, like, really, really interesting to me. Because it was, like, the sort of dynamics of what happened. And, again, like, that was just the way that we grew up, that I didn't think anything of it. And, like, a lot of people had issues with that. A lot of people are like, that's weird. And I hear someone call someone weird, and to me, like, when you call someone weird in Puerto Rico, it can mean, like, one of 2 things. Either, hey, they have a mental defect, or B, they, a lot of times, unfortunately, it's like, oh, that dude's gay or something. Like, that's what they're trying to really say with that. And, like, that's, again, growing up. But to me, like, when people call me weird, I'm like, bro, I don't like to touch penis, and I don't think I have a mental defect. Yeah, because it's, like, weird. Like, what are you trying to say? Like, define to me what's weird. I do something different. Like, I think I'm different. I don't think I'm weird. But again, that's just like how things are perceived between cultures, right?
Yeah. And I embrace being called weird. And I when I first brought Laura, she grew up in D.C. When I brought her here and introduced her to some of my friends, it was really kind of funny because everybody was like, he's weird. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, Kyle, yeah, he's weird. everyone kept saying, and she's like, why is everyone saying you're weird? And she's like, kind of like off put by a thing. It was like, I don't know, it's kind of strange, but we're laughing about how it kept happening. But I enjoy surrounding myself with people who are weird, which I define as different, interesting, into things that aren't usual. And I love when people can open up and be themselves enough where they're not trying to fit the standard of what everyone wants. Cool.
Well, yeah.
Go to Vegas and you go to the new strip. Everyone's got the nose up, trying to be cool, the designer stuff. You go to the old strip and everyone's letting loose and just having a good time. And I love going to the old strip for that reason, because everyone's just being themselves and having a good time.
That was one of the biggest problems I had was, and I still to this day, like I have it. It's like cultural differences and shit. I've been in the States since 2008, and like there's still like certain cultural differences that I don't get, like shooing someone. Like that was one that I've had to like correct people, like don't ever fucking shoot me, like go like this to me.
Yeah.
Like don't ever do that to me. Like we'll fucking start a fight, because in my culture when you do that to someone, that's extremely dismissive, and that's what you do to like a dog you want dead.
Yeah.
Like that's what that means where I come from. So like little things like that are like doing this, like that means like what the fuck do you want? That's what that means. Or like this, like in Puerto Rico, we'll do this. That means like yes. Which in sign language, that's something else. So like,
what else?
We'll talk outside. But yeah, okay, I am right. I had to like think for a second, like this. Yeah, that is okay. So that's the thing, is like cultural differences are like a big thing, and I think that's something that everybody experiences. Like I've lived in Boston, and I've lived in Missouri, and I've lived in South Korea, and I did some time in Iraq, and like there's fucking cultural differences, In South Korea, if an older person is standing up and no one takes their seat, you will see an older person stand up, smack a young person, tell them to move, and put the place. If you see a pregnant woman, the same thing. Drinking in Korea is completely different than what it is in other places. Drinking in Japan is completely different. How it is. How you interact with people in Japan versus in Korea versus in Iraq versus in America is completely different. How you interact with someone from the South and the North is completely different. So that's the thing that people don't understand, is that we all have different cultures. The thing is nobody wants to go, like I'm the type, and this comes from being an interpreter, I guess, is like, what word did you use? Bubbly? What the fuck is bubbly? Oh, a soda. Oh, a soda. Okay, cool. Or you go to like certain places and it's like, yo, give me a Coca-Cola. What kind? Coca-Cola. Sprite? Like,
right.
No, that's not
a lot of people do
fucking
just call it Coke here, yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So it's like little things like that I think like impede or have put a barrier in communication on people. Yeah. And people are just so used to like their own way that they don't want to move. And it's just a cultural thing. That's all it is.
Do you guys riff like we do? Like where you say hey to your buddy saying, hey, fuck face, and stuff like
Yeah.
Was that?
So that's not really a thing.
That's what I was wondering. No, so is that something you're like, what's going on?
That was something that to this day it still takes me back. When somebody's like, hey, fuck face, like I do it now because I understand that's the dynamic that we do. But I only do that with my very, very close friends or people that I'm cool with. Yeah. Like I'm pretty much like the same way. I mean, that's the only difference I think I have like from leaving Puerto Rico is I'll rib on somebody, right? That I know. But if someone that I don't know ribs on me, I'll just look at them, introduce myself, and then I'll let it be. Yeah. Because, like, I don't know why you're doing that. We're not fucking homies and we're not friends. So why are we doing this? What power player dynamic is in play here? Because if that's the case, I'm going to start, like, roasting you, too. And I have no issues, like, saying that you look like a dwarf that got fucked by Donald Duck. You know what I'm saying? Like, or you look like, Quasimodo and the Hunchback of Notre Dame had a kid. Which they're both the same character. So, yeah, that's an incest joke there. That joke did not land. So, like, that's the thing is, like, I don't have an issue with that. My problem is that I don't think that's conducive. I don't think that's conducive to, like, a good relationship because you're not even asking me how the fuck I am. That's why you notice when I'm arguing, hey, how you doing? Like, how's everything? And then we can start bullshitting. Because I don't know if you're about to just be like, Richard, I'm about to burn my fucking house down. Like, fuck this. Yeah. So, like, that was one thing that took me forever, how people, like, so openly talk to each other like that. And I was just like, no, like, don't fucking do that with me. A lot of people didn't like that. So I was like, I'm cool with that.
Yeah. But I feel like even here, you'll have people who don't get it. They're not used to it. And some like, I had a few employees at a shop. Wow, it's been 11 years now. It was 11 years ago. But they were all from the same town, Monette. Like 3 guys that were all from Monette, and they weren't into
you mean
that.
Monexico?
Yes.
Monexico.
Yes.
So let me correct you
Yes,
there.
it is that. Yeah. There's I don't know what all is. I know they have a Tyson plant there and some stuff, but and that
Tyson
town
chicken
has
plant.
money. Their law enforcement's really well taken care of too.
I
They got all
bet.
the good stuff.
I bet they are.
They used to issue, they probably don't anymore, but back in the day they carried HK USP 40s when everyone was still
Jesus,
doing
bro.
40 cal.
How big your budget has to be for everybody in the department to have an HNK?
Right?
Like that's what I want to know. How big is your budget?
Yeah.
Because that's wild to me.
Well, Santa
That's just
Monica
wild.
used to issue G36s. And it's like, it's crazy. California is nuts. There was an apartment down there. That
was this after the bank heist with
Oh yeah, well
Okay.
after. So that I think
could
that was like
understand that.
94. You know what's
Yeah,
crazy is
I
I
can
lived
understand
5 minutes from that bank, and I had the long form law enforcement report of that, where it's a full breakdown of everything and exact
fired
minutes
30,000
of stuff.
bullets.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I had that on a digital file on my phone. This is when smartphones were finally getting smart enough to do stuff like this, and I went over to that bank and just walked around and read the whole thing cover to cover, like going through the area. And I actually did find 2 bullet holes that were still there because I talked to a bank manager and he said, no, everything's been covered up. They've resurfaced the concrete and everything. But there's this metal, like tin top on top of a concrete fence behind the building, and there's 2 bullet holes you'll see in there.
That's interesting. I remember we studied that when I went through SRT school in the Army. And they were like, this is a situation where an MO would come in and like would take care of it, or hey, if you're in there with the initial team, you gotta just flash and hit him in the head, like you gotta aim for headshots. This is why we train headshots and whatnot. That was one of the things that I was like, I remember seeing that whole interaction. It was hours long footage, and I was like, shit, an MO could have just hit him. But at that time, that wasn't a standard thing for bank robbers to do.
Right.
Like that was like brand new.
Well, and they successfully had knocked off 5 trucks.
Yeah.
In Colorado and in California, and the truck didn't show up, and they're ripped out of their mind off meth, and they decided, oh, this is a good idea, let's just rob the bank with no plan. They met weightlifting in a gym. Those guys could both bench press, I don't remember what it was. It's like one could bench press like 330, and the other one I think was near 400. Like they were big, ripped out oxes, and they'd load themselves with speed.
And on meth.
Yeah. And that's why they were unstoppable, bullet after bullet.
I've never dealt with someone on meth. We've had to deal with people on PCP and on spice before, but I can't imagine meth.
Meth is wild. If they're ripped on it enough, it's a superpower. And until you hit something vital with a bullet.
PCP, man. PCP. Yeah. If you slap a choke on a motherfucker with PCP, he'll go out. I'll tell you that right now. You can't stop that right there. You slap a good rear naked choke and you link that in, and he's going to sleep.
I do have a friend that got in a shooting with a guy at PCP. I believe it's called water, where they dip their cigarettes in it, and it's usually more brand cigarettes. But if you're pulling cigarettes, here's a cop tip for everybody. You pull the cigarettes out of the pack and you see a water line, it's been dipped, and that's called water. That's PCP. The other fun thing about cigarettes, I used to smoke Parliaments. And Parliaments have a recessed filter. That recessed filter, because of that, they have a thicker cardstock. And it's a choice of snipers, because that thicker cardstock won't get soggy while it's sitting in your lip. So you can just let it sit in your mouth. The other thing about Parliaments, if you ever open a pack of cigarettes, it's like Marlboro or something like that, pull a cigarette out and check. And if you see Parliament on it, you'll look and it looks like it's flush at the top. That's actually Coke. So they'll get the Parliaments, line it with Coke, pat it in, and then take the cigarette out, stick the cigarette in their mouth, and hit it.
I don't fuck with cigarettes. I started smoking cigars when I was like 20 in Iraq. Like we had a guy that had a bunch of cigars, and like it was the only thing that could calm me down. Yeah. But like cigarettes is not something I don't know, man. They don't, It's
I've
just
seen cigars that don't do it for me. Joseph, who's running cams, say hi, Joseph.
Joseph knows the amount of mass that I have under this shirt now. He said that I felt like a polar bear, so
when he was micing you up.
He's micing me up. Well, this is a really fuzzy shirt. That's my pec asshole. It's all right.
Well, I was smoking cigars some with him and a friend, and I learned that the Davidoff Nicaraguans were my favorite.
Have you had the cigarillos?
And I don't want to talk about it. I have a pack of Parliament full flavors that's in my car, and it's a power trip for me because I quit about 2 years ago, and knowing that they're right there if you want them. I don't know why, but it's just a weird thing.
It's always been weird to me. Like, I know people who smoked their whole life, never had cancer. I know people, like, I've always been the type of person, like, I used to smoke before competing. I'd smoke a cigarillo, smoked after. Doesn't really, like, I've not smoked, and, like, I've gathered enough data on myself that I'm like, there's not really much of a fucking difference. Like, there really isn't. So I've always, it's relaxing. It's, like, very soothing to me, like, to have a nice cigar and a conversation. Like, it's an experience, which is what you're really paying for when you get, like, a nice cigar and whatnot. What you're paying for is the experience of being able to smoke it. But people just, some stupid people think that cigars are like cigarettes, where it's like, no, that's not the ordeal. And, you know, that's why I'm like, cigarettes just have never really done it for me. Yeah. It's just they're icky. They're icky.
We had a guy in our academy, his name's Austin, and he would hit 2 cigarettes every break that we had.
Yep.
And the first couple of days, all the cops teaching kept giving a hard time. We're going to have fun watching you in PT. You mentioned the PT thing not having effect. He's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Did it? Yeah, okay. You know, just playing his game, smoking his cigarettes. We finally go out to do the first PT test, which part of that was 1.5 miles. He lapped everybody twice. Yep. He had the goofiest run, this big, long, slow motion stride that looked like it's 10-yard steps every time. His head thrown way back, and he just flew around the track. And I wasn't working at this department when he was, but he worked at a department I was at for a bit. And there's a trailer park called McCord Bend. That's a 2-man call at night. You don't go there alone. He lived there. He lived there with his German Shepherds, and he would strap his Kimber 1911 on a belt over his gym shorts, you know, his Ranger panties, and a tank top, or a T-shirt probably. I don't remember what he wore on top, but it's 7 miles from the sheriff's office. And he would jog in, and then he was the only guy who used the lockers and everything. And then he'd throw on his uniform after a shower, and he'd work his shift. And then he'd get out of the uniform and then run the 7 miles back home.
He's got a cigarette the whole time he's running.
Oh, yeah. And civilian life didn't work out for him. He ended up going back to the military. And it's funny because the Battlefield Mall is a mall that's here in town. And a buddy of mine, when we would talk about Austin and how he fits in the civilian world, we would always have this routine where he'd say, Kyle, would you follow Austin into the battlefield? And I was like, absolutely, yes. He's someone I would love to lead the way in a battlefield. Kyle, would you follow Austin into the Battlefield Mall? I said, absolutely not. I just wouldn't.
Yeah, everybody when they get out, they have a hard time adapting, man.
Yeah.
And it's similar reasons, but it's also like some people have like the same reasons, you know? Yeah. It's just the way it is. Like when you live in the military, it's a different. People say it's a career. Well, it's actually a lifestyle. Like it's a completely different lifestyle. Like first of all, you know, you're dealing with everybody that's in a higher level of shape than the average person. It's just because you have to. Obviously, we've seen the past few years where certain standards have dropped, but like you're dealing with people who can run at least a mile. You know, at least. So it's very different living the military lifestyle versus the civilian lifestyle. And I think that's what some people get confused a lot of times when they think about the military. And it's like, yeah, it's like a completely different world if you really think about it. It's I mean, for me, it was like, it wasn't really much of a shock because I was just like, I already had like a mindset sort of like living with my dad. Like, hey, you wake up, you shave, you go to school, come home, you read, you do your homework, you have dinner. You can play video games. You can read. Go to bed. You wake up at weekends. You do whatever. So that part of it, like for me, was helpful. But it's not for everybody, man. Yeah. Not everybody can have that. Same with being a cop. It's like a different lifestyle too, because you know you're out and about in the street every day and people see your face. So yeah, it's different, man. It's real different. It's real different. Yeah, it's just real different. I'm going in a circle there.
You're good. So what was your path in the military?
The what?
What was your path? MOS, what all did you choose to do?
I went 31 Bravo, military police. So I went to Fort Leonard Wood, Charlie 787, 14MP, Charlie 787 Company, 14MP Brigade, 787 Battalion, Charlie Company. and it was really interesting because like to this day, like I drive by when I go on base, I drive by it, and the barracks that I went through are still there, man.
Yeah.
Like they're still there, so it's like a little bit different. But that's the path that I went, and when I went through, we went through a thing called AMPS, which was Advanced Military Police. Which basically was you graduate like a few weeks early, and then that meant like, hey, you have more people now because they needed a lot of MPs.
Right.
So I ended up graduating early, and like basic training for me was just a trip because it was just like I just didn't care. Like I didn't. It's not that I didn't care. I didn't have a filter. If someone told me to do something, I did it. Like it didn't matter if it was like mean or anything. So like people take advantage of that sometimes.
Yeah.
But other than that, man, great experience. Learned a shit ton. Had a great. Everybody says they had a great drill sergeant. Well, I had a pretty damn good drill sergeant. That it was just him and like I think less than 20 of us, and pretty much it was like, hey, go the whole time. And then I graduated, and when I graduated, I went to 252 MP, which is still at Fort Leonard Wood. And I was like, I never forget. I showed up, and they were like, all right, can you pass the PT test? Yep. All right, you're going to go take a PT test right now. I'm like, okay. Pass the PT test. They're like, okay, well, we're going to assign you a room. We're going to do this. And, like, after 3 weeks, they're like, hey, you're going to have to go to a specialty. There's, like, an SRT slot that you're going to go to. And I was like, oh, I get to go to SWAT school. That's cool. And 463rd MP came over. And when 463rd MP came over, the first sergeant Ball and Sergeant Reeds was the two guys who came over to talk to the first sergeant at 252. And I remember I was standing there, and I hear First Sergeant Ball go, he's like, I need one, man. He's like, I got a few pregnant females that they're not going to be able to go with us. And Sergeant Reed's outside, and I'm like, what's going on, Sergeant? And everybody's like, shut the fuck up. And Sergeant Reed's like, oh, we need someone to volunteer to go to Iraq. I was like, I'll volunteer. And like Sergeant Reed was the HR guy, which I didn't know that at the time. He goes, will you really? He's like, so you'll sign a deck statement canceling your orders? I'm like, I don't know what those words mean, but if I get to go to Iraq. He's like, yeah, absolutely. And like me being the dumb child that I am, I was like, yeah, sure, what the fuck ever. And like that right there, like I knew right then and there, like those people, like the 252 people were pissed. Because, you know, you have a certain amount of people that you need to have on your roster. So your roster is either green, yellow, or red.
Gotcha.
And, you know, everybody always wants to be green because it looks good on evaluations. Like, these are just like higher up things. And then I left with the 463rd. He's like, all right, you're going to be on vacation for these days. Here's a book. Read whatever you want. And then I was on vacation, and then I was on a flight to go to fucking Kuwait. And then from Kuwait, we did train up at Kuwait. And then from there, we landed in Iraq I think it was June 25th that we landed, if I recall correctly, of 2008.
Where at?
Baghdad.
Okay.
At Pad Liberty. So we were at Pad Liberty, which is where the airport that you saw that they took over and shit like that. We were near that. And at first, the first month or two, it was basically training, and then we ran on a few missions. Then I went to 2nd Platoon because I got into some trouble there with 1st Platoon. And then I got to 2nd Platoon. I met Sergeant Charles. And that dude, I still talk to that dude to this day. Like, some of the stories, because he sees these interviews, and he's like, oh, yeah, I remember that. He's like, I remember that. And from there, man, that was the rest of Iraq. It was just with 2nd Platoon. Our code name was the Demons. So I was Demon 22 Alpha Delta. So that's where my Iraq, like, that's where I found my place. Like, it was basically, if you think about it, I went from Puerto Rico to Missouri to Iraq in a fucking year.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a whole nother thing that we can get into too, how that went. But yeah, Sergeant Charles is a good dude, man. That dude helped me a lot. Like, great fucking leader. Great leader. So, but yeah, brother, hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah. You said you got in trouble with the other unit. What happened?
I had a lieutenant that had said some comments, and I had said some comments back to him that I won't repeat, so you don't have to bleep it out. And I got in trouble because they were like, hey, you shouldn't talk to an officer like that. And I was like, okay, cool. So I did my time, and 1st Platoon was like, he's too new or whatever the fuck, which they were having these conversations in front of me. Like, he's just too new. We don't need him. We don't want to babysit somebody. And you know, that company at the time that they went, you know, they had guys that was their 5th or 6th tour, and we're talking 2008. You know, I mean, shit. 2nd platoon, that was Sergeant Charles' 2nd time, Sergeant Dole's 2nd time, McVeigh's 1st time, O'Neill's 7th time because he was with the 82nd. So I mean, you add all that up, that's well over 10 years of combat experience. 10 tours, I'm sorry, not years. Yep. 10 tours of combat experience within those guys. So like, that's a lot of knowledge and a lot of wisdom. And dude, it was like take off running because you did drills every day. Like, there was no fucking downtime for like that time. Then the SOFA kicked in. And once the Statute of Forces Agreement kicked in May, then we just weren't running missions. We were just doing stuff in the base.
Yeah.
But from September all the way to fucking September of 08 to May of 08, we were just running missions every day. Like, whether it was picking up an HVT or serving a warrant with the IPs or training the IPs in the IA or conducting night raids with the IA or the IPs, the Iraqi Army, the Iraqi police. It was just wild. Like, it was a wild time, man. So, yeah, that's what ended up happening with that situation.
Did you find yourself digging that?
What do you mean?
Like, enjoying that? Being able to do those kind of things? Or, like, what was going on in your head doing mission work and everything like that?
Well, it varies.
Yeah.
Because, like, you know, everybody thinks that once you hit the ECP, that it's a respawn point. And, like, for me, like, the first time we found an IED, I was, like, excited because I'm like, fuck yeah. But then once EOD came out and they, like, dealt with the IED and they showed us what it was, and it was like a rocket with, like, inside of a mortar that was aiming right at the entrance of, like, the underpass of a bridge. Like, I saw that, and it was like, I call these glass shattering moments. People have different names for them. I call them glass shattering moments because, like, you kind of wake up to the reality of what something really fucking is. You know, as a teenager, I had that too. But, like, as a 19-year-old at war, like, I remember the first time, like, I started having panic attacks for, like, 2 weeks. Because I would come back and, you know, you find IEDs everywhere. We found anybody who was there in 08, 09, 07, they were getting hit hard. You just found IEDs everywhere. Because at that point, we had gotten pretty fucking good at, like, identifying IEDs. We had the system that when you turned it on, it killed cell phone reception. So a lot of their tricks were with cell phones.
Right.
And that's how they would blow it up. We killed that.
Right.
Because we would just turn it was called JAM.
Mm-hmm.
And every MRAP had it. That's what we drove, was MRAPs. And it was like fucking terrifying the first time. You know, the first time I cleared a house, we had trained for like a week. And it was like McSweeney or McVeigh, I can't remember the name of the corporal. He had been at SRT school, which the way the Army works is most schools are trained the trainers. Mm-hmm. Basically what they do is they're going to teach you everything through 3 phases: crawl, walk, and run. I'm not going to add stress on the crawl. I'm going to teach you something. Then at the walk, we're going to add little hiccups to see if you understand it. If you don't, we're going to go back to crawl. Then we're going to walk. And then we're going to run. We're going to add stress to everything. So, like, you know, clearing a room, you put engineer tape. And it's like, okay, hey, you have to watch this corner here. Hey, when you're entering a room, you know, it's okay to come in. And for me, the biggest thing, because I was a breacher. So it was like, hey, you have to have the bolt cutters. You have to have the hooligan on you. And I carried a M249 with a short barrel and short barrel and a short stock. That way it's easier to, like, maneuver and enter. And you have 1,000 rounds on you. Like, that's a lot. Mm-hmm. So do that for 12 hours a day, and it's just drilling. You're just drilling how to flow into a room of people that have never fucking done this. And then you go do it in real life. Like, I remember the first time we went into a house, it was a mission that, it was like a 24-hour mission. I have the video somewhere. And we're just fucking waiting for intel. We're sitting at a TCP, I think it was, or inside of a station or something. And we're just waiting for intel over the radio to say, hey, the guy's in the house. Finally, it comes like at 3 in the morning or some shit like that. And we go hit the house, and some of the houses, what they would do is they would put a wire, and most places didn't have doors. What they had was just a panel. But if the panel was flushed, what they were doing is they had a wire with a sort of bomb at the other end. So what we would do is we would run like a knife or a machete around the little bit of the panel. And if the panel was too firm, like you can tell. But what they did was they started leaving the panel like this, so that way you would know. But you could see or whatever. And this one time I'm just running it through the door because they call like, hey, breach her up. And I like go through the side, pull out, and I'm pulling the machete, and the fucking wood panel falls off. And talk about I almost shit myself.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I'm dead. And then we just flowed through the house in like less than 5 minutes. Woke up the guy sleeping, which is the only time that I have seen that happen in all my time there. Normally people were still partying or like they were like half asleep or half drunk, you know. And woke up the guy, bag and tied him, put him in the back, and we left. And when I got on base, I took off my uniform. I went like this, and just water fucking came out because of all the nerves. Like just water. Like I would go like this, and you would see water just coming out of me. And I was like, ooh, that was terrifying. That was like the first time like doing it. But it was, again, like a lot of fucking rehearsal. And you kind of grow used to it. But on the downside, you also, like, for me, the downside is, like, I realize, like, how easy that is to do. So it's like now in the civilian sector, it's like I kind of tell people, like, man, like, you never know how close some people are to violence.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's real easy for, like, a group of guys to just stack up on your door, buy some flashbangs. They're $30 a pop to $100 a pop, and just fucking come into your house and fuck you up. So, like, that's the downside for me, is like, oh, shit, like, that's really easy to do. Somebody could do that to me. But you kind of grow used to it. And there's, like, a comfort that comes with it because, you know, in Iraq, it was more of, like, is that an issue? And the flow chart was yes. Okay, can I shoot it? No. Then it's not a fucking issue at this time. Is it an issue? Yes. Can I shoot it? Yes. Then it's no longer an issue after I shoot it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that flow chart was very, very easy, and there's some comfort level to it. And I think that's what a lot of guys like don't really get about the OIF, OEF guys. It's like there's just a certain level of comfortability with violence that it's like, I don't want to go there. I just want to be left alone. But at the same time, it's not really hard for someone to do. And that's just my feeling about the whole thing. Because, you know, we had some other stuff that happened too that we can get into if you want. But, like, that was basically, like, the main... That's how I can answer that question. Yeah. Is, like, it became kind of like a sense of home. Because it's like, oh, I have a purpose. Yeah. I don't have to worry about all this other shit. I don't have to worry about bills. I don't have to worry about shit. Me, personally. Like, that was my experience with that.
Yeah. Man, the whole booby trapping thing, we had one where we were hitting a house, and I was running point around the back side of this house, and all of a sudden, I can feel I just snagged a line with my foot. So I start yelling, stop, 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 you know, and everyone's kind of stopping right there around me and next to me, and we go ahead and go white lights at that point and start looking around. And they can see where they can work around it, and I'm just going to sit here for a minute and assess and figure things out. And in the end, it turns out guys in the front of the house ran into it as well. And there was another line up there. And something, you know, you'll hear guys putting fish hooks, razor blades, things like that in lines as well, not just explosives and everything. And what's crazy is this guy had this wild, like, Z shape in his front yard that you'd walk to not trip those wires to head to the front door. That's in the backyard, there wasn't really a set path or anything anywhere. You're just going to hit them. And there were bells all over on these lines. So I tripped the wire in the back. Two guys tripped the wires in the front, and no bells rang. He's got them like wrapped around trees and stuff in ways to where by the time we hit the lines, it never made a bell go off. So it's like it was just a hillbilly alarm system.
That's how you know God's by your side, bro.
You're right.
That's how you know God's by your side. Like that right there. Like, oh, thank Jesus. Like that's how I felt like most of the time. I was like, oh,
it's
thank
definitely
God.
a pucker factor moment, like what you're the glass shatter for sure.
Well, yeah, because it's like, oh, this is like I've made a mistake. This is why night vision is so important.
Oh, yeah.
And hitting a house at night is really, really important, because the cover of darkness provides so many tactical advantages that most people really don't understand, like at night, like what it is. Plus, you're kitted up and you're geared out, so it's kind of like that adds a factor too. But yeah, man, you fucking never know, bro.
Yeah.
You never know, man.
So did you get into interpreting in the military?
I did some interpreting in the military, yeah. The main thing that I did is I would help people with their Spanish homework. Like, that was like the main thing that I did for like so many guys. Like, every week I had a couple people that just, hey man, I'm taking a Spanish class, can you help me? Yeah, dude,
The guys
absolutely.
doing their college.
Well, yeah, because you have time to do it. You have the tuition assistance, which is a great thing to do.
Oh yeah.
But interpreting in general in the military, working with interpreters was cool, especially at war, which I already had like an understanding of like what interpreting should look like from like school. But war really added or taught me like that level of trust that I gotta have you. And that's why it's important, like, you know, we had good interpreters that they just would not engage with the Iraqis. They would stay with us, which, you know, it's a danger to them because, you know, that's where they live. So like I learned a lot from watching that on how to just remain neutral at the highest level. And that's why I tell people, like, just remain neutral. Don't hang out with the attorneys. Don't, if you want to do that, that's on you. I know interpreters that they have great relationships with attorneys and shit like that. I look at some attorneys the way that I look at shitty actors. Like, they'll sell their mom's pussy for a role, you know? And like, I just stay away. Because I don't ever want to be that interpreter that I smile or do something and then someone sees that and they take that as, oh, he's not interpreting accurately. Because at the highest level, that counted. At the highest level of interpreting, all you have to do is tell me what they're saying, right? So for me in the Army, what I learned was I took the DLPT, the Defense Language Proficiency Test 5, which that's for Spanish. And that helped me dramatically because now when we had situations, which we had situations like that where people would come in and they needed an interpreter because Fort Leonard Wood is a publicly open installation because you have graduating classes every day of the week except the weekends, and you have individuals that want to come and they want to see, you know, they want to see what's going on, or they want to, maybe they don't want to go around the highway on 44 and they just want to go through to get to Houston because it's faster, or they want to come on base and they have family members or they're retirees. There's a million things. So a lot of the times what would happen is I would get calls. Like, we got a call one time, I never forget this one. I was fucking dead asleep and they're like, hey, you're the only Spanish speaker we have. He's like, I need you to get kitted up. We have a family that we're holding at the Missouri Avenue. So if you go out, you ever been to Leonard Wood?
Yeah.
When you go to Leonard Wood at the, I think it's the main entrance at, I think it's 166 or 167, 68, whatever that fucking entrance is, where the Taco Bell and the Buffalo Wild Wings is. So that entrance, if you go down, it's Missouri Avenue. And when you're heading up north, there's a little gas station on your left side, on your driver's side, if you're going up. And we had a car pulled over where the gentleman had defecated himself. And I pulled up and you can smell the shit. And it's like a family in there. And I start talking to him. I go, hey, what's going on? He's like, I pooped my pants. They were arguing with him because they wanted him to go in and just change into something else. But he didn't have any clothes and he was embarrassed. It was an older gentleman who spoke Spanish. And I fucking took one of the patrol cars, just went back. I had a big size of pants that didn't fit me. Brought it back, gave it to him. Fucking gave him some privacy, put a towel. And like, I told everybody, like, this is what's happening. But, you know, think about it from their perspective, right? From the people's perspective that don't speak the language. You have a bunch of white dudes, which is what was happening at that time. Not that race has anything to do with it. But this is one of the things that I tell people, like, you have to be able to understand, like, what the perception and what that person is perceiving versus what you're perceiving are two very different things. So if the interpreter is supposed to be able to break that barrier, or at least unite the communication, so that way there's a flow of communication. So I went in, did that, and the dude like went to hug me, and I instinctively like just pulled on my hip and like, you know, went to my gun and told him straight up too. I apologize for that.
You're good.
Told him straight up too, like, hey, it's no problem. Then I explained to everybody, and then that was it. But there were situations like that. I had a situation in Korea where we were doing town patrol, and the dudes behind us were with hookers. and they're talking in Spanish, going, no, they're not gonna know. And dude, I'm like, bro, what the fuck? Why are you out breaking curfew? And I let it go for a little bit, hoping in my head like maybe they'll turn around and I won't pretend. And one of the guys spoke a little bit of Spanish, and he goes, no. They'll never know that we're in. They'll never know that we're in. Nunca van a saber que estamos adentro, que estamos en eso. And he just turned around. He goes, let me see your ID. And when you do town patrol in Korea at that time, you had the KMP with you, the Korean National Police. Dude, the KMP don't give a fuck. If the KMP asks you for your ID and you don't give them your ID, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to see Korean Taekwondo or whatever martial art they know, bro. Like, they're going to fuck you up. It was 2 minutes and we had to arrest them. Like, I don't know what happened after that, but I just hit him with breaking curfew. Because I was like, bro, I am not hitting you with, like, a prostitution thing because I can't prove it. All I know is I'm the only one who understood it. And I was like, I am not saying shit. I am not an interpreter at this time. I am a patrolman, so I know nothing. And we just hit him with breaking curfew. So, like, situations like that happen all the time, you know. But my time in the military was more like teaching and helping people. Because there was also a lot of people who want to learn Spanish, and they'd pay like $10 an hour, $5 an hour, just sit down and bullshit with you to like have a conversation in Spanish so they could keep that fluid, you know? Like the Army, what people don't understand about the military in general is like it's a mecca of cultures. Like when I lived on Missouri Avenue, I remember, and I have a joke about this, that I always say living in an Army barracks room is like living in a Vegas dorm room. Where the first floor, it's just sex. It's just people fucking and people put socks on their doors and just wild things. The second floor is like the gamers and the people who like to bet. It's like the place where you're going to open the doors and it'll be like, we're playing Call of Duty. We got 6 TVs on. You in? Ah, cool. Third floor for us, it was where I lived. It's like where everybody cooked. It's like where everybody cooked. Everybody was clean. You know, people played video games on their own, kind of like loners. Every now and then you'd see like some strippers going down a slip and slide that somebody made in the third floor, like crazy shit like that. And then the fourth floor and so on, it's like, it depends, you know, it's like the guys who are like divorced and stuff like that. Like the Army compartmentalizes their people, but it's a mecca of culture. And like, you have to understand, like different cultures meet up and we have one standard, which is the Army standard. But then when we're off work, like, bro, I'm off work. Like, don't fucking bother me. You know, like, do not fucking bother me. And that's something that some units just don't do. You know, some people it's Army 24/7. Other people it's armies from until you're back in your place, you know. But that's how I always say the military is. It's just a clusterfuck of cultures that are together, and everybody's just like hanging out with each other. Like there's a meme where you see like a guy with a swastika tattooed, and then you see another guy with like a Chicano like sort of look, and then you see another guy like dressed like a Nigerian prince, and then it says Army Barracks Party 101.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's exactly what it's like, literally.
When I was working at the airport, had a roommate that also worked there, and there were 3 soldiers that flew in who were going to be doing training at Fort Leonard Wood, and nobody was here to pick them up, and their contact is not answering the phone. And this happened fairly frequently.
Oh, yeah.
And so Jason's like, if you're cool with it, let's just let him crash the house. I'm like, yeah, I'm good with that. So we let them come to the house, and they're just normal soldiers, right? And I was surprised seeing the differences there. And like one of the guys, like I never thought anything of it. He gets into his civvy clothes, and he's all black punk with his outfit, showing me pictures where he grew up in New York City, and he's got the like foot-long, tall, purple dyed mohawk and everything, and I'm not seeing this at all. What? He throws in these huge gauged earrings. I didn't even notice his ears are stretched before that. I was like, that's so wild. And how I don't know. That was just mind-blowing to me.
We had a guy when I was in Iraq that his name was Jason Powell. This dude, he lives in St. Roberts now. This dude was just always fucking mean. Like, he wasn't an asshole. I never considered him an asshole because anything that he ever said just wasn't mean. It was just that his personality was like, he'd been to war so many times.
Right.
That his personality was, I need you to be as fit as possible. And if I recall correctly, he had deployed with like a special operations unit. And as an MP, like, I would assume that, that's the cream of the crop. So everything else is going to look like shit to you, right?
Yeah.
And I remember one time we were doing training at the gym, and this little fucking mock-up gym that was like 5 million fucking degrees in there. And he's doing jujitsu with these guys, and he fucking choked everybody in his platoon. And the first thought I had was, how much do you have to hate the fucking world that you can just choke all those people, like, jokingly? And that was my first introduction to jiu-jitsu. And, dude, to this day, like, I talked to that guy, and, like, that's the reason I started jiu-jitsu. But it's like, seeing, like, the complete mecca of the complete, like, lack of, like, not giving a fuck that you see in the military a lot of times is something that is pretty shocking to some people. And that's why I said earlier, like, it's just a clash of cultures, man.
Yeah.
And you just got to understand, like, hey, just maybe stay quiet, maybe just play the game and just see where you fall in. Like, that's the thing.
That's one of the things I loved about living in LA is you get exposure to every culture. It's a city that's got a little bit of everything going on in it. And just, it was fun. I worked a lot in different forms of security. And with that, there was tons of Marines I met that are all reservists at Pendleton. And, but yeah, and I worked hotel security in Beverly Hills, rooftop pool party. That's how I spent my weekends. It was freaking fantastic.
I heard they have a lot of parties in the streets now, There's probably a lot of culture now with all the homeless people.
Oh.
Probably have different smells
for sure
coming from there.
For sure.
Like,
I was there, I don't know, 2 years ago, something like that. And yeah, there's an area under a bridge where I used to live, and there was always one guy that lived there, and occasionally there'd be a second person that shows up temporarily, right? And it was wild because it's under the 101 freeway, that whole center median concrete and the sidewalks, just tent cities. And so many of these areas that they weren't at that are just completely taken over now.
Someone showed me a picture of that, and then they showed me a street in Iraq, and they were like, spot the differences. I'm like, I fucking can't.
Right.
like I fucking can't. Sorry.
Oh, it's so crazy. That was something that used to blow my mind. We drove from LA to Austin for South by Southwest one year, and going through El Paso. It's like a big, beautiful Best Buy building, all glass building, and you look over the river, and it just looks like the slums of Rio de Janeiro of pictures I've seen. And it's so wild, that contrast. A river split and everything changes. And like a couple weeks before that, too, there was a news article. I was like, oh, great, we're going to have to drive by this. Some lady was just driving down the freeway right there, and she felt something bite her leg. She got hit by a 5.56 bullet. That's a street war going on over the river. There was a stray round. It went through her car door and into her leg.
Yeah, that's just wild. That's too much for me. That's just, I like my peace, man. That's why I like Springfield. I think somebody had posted that. Some fucking real estate company had made a comment that Springfield was like one of the top 20 most dangerous cities to live in. And I was like, in what fucking world?
It depends on how you're running the figures. You can make it look that way.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if we're going to talk mathematically, well, like, what are we doing this? Are we dividing this per capita, per people? Because I've lived here, man, and granted, we have a lot more homeless people lately, but even the homeless dudes, like, they know not to fuck with people. I don't know. It's a weird time, man. It's just a weird time.
Yeah, the per capita stuff is funky. There's definitely some more issues here. I know there's a lot more shootings than the news gets a hold of. There's commonly 4 to 5 shootings a week that are happening, so it's not making it to the media. And they're doing a good job for, trying to promote people to the area by covering a lot of that up. It is bad, but the per capita things, it's always tough to really see what that means because we had a guy, you know where Sparta is? So a little tiny town, right? When I was in the academy, there's a guy who comes from Sparta, and he starts his pitch to us trying to recruit with Sparta has more crime per capita than Los Angeles. And I was like, all right, get the fuck out of here, bro. Like, that's a cute pitch. And then, And it's like, yeah, because you got 60 people that live there and there's a murder this year.
That would be like saying that Missouri has more brown people per capita than Texas.
Yes,
Like,
exactly.
in what fucking world? Are you discounting all of Texas except fucking Dallas?
Right.
Like,
And
what?
you know how you can cherry pick certain
Oh, fuck
things.
yeah. I can cherry pick anything,
yeah.
bro. Anything. Give me something, I'll fucking cherry pick it with numbers. But that's just so... That's a perk.
Well, then he gets into the pitch talking about it's a very great place to be proactive because we have all this crime.
Proactive.
Right.
Oh,
And
that's
then,
a big word.
as he starts talking about his day-to-day routine, it's next day past occurred burglaries. You know, it's just you're dealing with break-ins when somebody found out the next day their shop got hit or whatever. And it's like, those are the worst. You're not even out there getting to chase bad guys.
God.
You're just cleaning up the wreck after.
I think the scariest thing that ever happened to me was when me and my wife were dating, we had someone try to like break into our place. And I had, I have things to defend myself, and I had a guard dog. This was like 5-6 years ago. And I remember like I popped through the window and I like clear the window, and when I come in to check and I pull up, I see a dude with a hoodie like trying to pick the lock, and my dog's just sitting right there just like this waiting. So I just like cocked the shotgun, and the dude runs all the way around, and I saw him like following the wall. I'm like, that's really weird. Like, if you're gonna run, you would just run because the street's out there. I'm like,
Right.
that motherfucker's gonna go through the front. So I run through the front, dog between my legs, and I'm like clearing the house, making sure everything's good. Go in, and when I open the door, sure as fuck, he's like starting to walk over, and he
That's
sees me with the
insane.
shotgun, and he fucking runs away.
This dude hears a shotgun pump
And he
sound.
fucking goes through the front door.
That's
That's the
insanity.
thing that like drove me off the wall.
You
the
said
crazy,
you weren't around meth. Are you sure?
No, I lived on Pennsylvania Avenue when that
Okay,
happened.
okay.
That's when I lived. This was like 6 years ago when I lived on Pennsylvania Avenue. The crazy part is I did all that naked.
Hell yeah.
And my wife was like, she's like, why the fuck are you naked? I go, I want that motherfucker to remember me.
Yep.
Like, when that dude goes to jail and he goes, bro, don't fucking break into, I think it was 1140 South Pennsylvania. Like, that dude is crazy. He had a shotgun and a boner, and the boner was scarier than anything. And I'm just like, I remember the cops, they came like a few days later, like, hey, did you get broken into or something? And bless my wife, sorry, this is when we were dating, when we were talking. She goes, no, but the owner of the house is a friend of mine, and he like fucking scared the shit out of the dude naked. And the cop just looks at her, and I look at the cop, and I'm just sitting there like looking at him, and he's like, all right, you'll have a blessed day. And I go, you probably shouldn't tell people that.
Right.
She's like, why? This is exactly what happened. I'm like, no, just you shouldn't be telling people that I was naked with a boner, like about to shoot a motherfucker. Like, it doesn't make me sound very cool. But yeah, man, that's about the scariest thing. Like, besides like the trafficking stuff that I've dealt with, like for me personally, that was like one of the scariest things, because it's like, oh, this motherfucker's really determined to like break into the house.
Yeah.
Like, bro, there ain't nothing in here that's worth your life or my peace of mind. Like, bloodstains are fucking hard to clean, bro. Like, very hard to clean. So.
That's crazy. I still can't believe that.
There's dumb people like that.
Yeah.
There's dumb people like that in the world, unfortunately. Everywhere in the world, man. Everywhere. It's like people who get into fights with people who have cauliflower ear. Like, that always blew my mind. Or
I didn't get that until I started hanging out around people. And then I see it now. And it's so funny. We were doing a detail in Nashville, and we had this younger guy with us who's 25 at the time. And we're rolling around in this Mercedes Sprinter limo. He's like, wow, you need to get that guy on security. And I was like, why? It's like, look at his ears. He's got good ears. And they're all blown out. You can tell the dude's he's constantly in the gym doing that.
I always laugh. One of our black belts says, that's nature's way of warning you.
Yeah.
Like, nature has a good way to warn you.
Yep.
Someone with fucked up ears and scars,
Yep.
that's a good way to just know, like, just let that man be. Or someone who smiles no matter what happens. Like,
Yeah.
the motherfucker who smiles, like, just back away.
Have you
Like,
seen that? I think it's just a still, but there may be a video where there's like a crazy fight going on and people like freaking out and yelling and the whole crowd's, and there's a dude just chilling, smiling, holding a martini glass, just like just hanging out, enjoying the moment. And it's like, be this guy. It's like,
mind your own fucking business.
I started off in corrections, and we had a guy, he was 66, retired from California. His name is Guy Georgiana, and I respected the hell out of him. Super intelligent. He taught me stuff. It's like, yeah, we've been teaching this since the 80s in LA. And then here we are. He's telling me this stuff the first time. How to use reflective light when you search a room. You point your light at the white ceiling. What color is ceilings? Pretty much always white. You don't get tunnel vision searching the room. It casts everything, and now you can see movement.
Yep.
And it's like...
It also, you know what the most important part of that is?
What?
It'll reveal shadows immediately.
Oh, yeah.
That's the biggest thing. Yeah, man, it's little things like that people don't understand. And again, it's all about, I always tell people, like, when it comes to tactics, the thing is, like, you have to adapt your tactics to your gear, your capabilities, and your environment.
Yeah.
Your gear, because if you don't have gear, there's not much shit you can do. Your environment, because it's going to dictate how you do it. And your capabilities, because if you don't really train or know how to do shit, then you're kind of like fucked, you know? But yeah, that's little things like that is what always surprises me when people, like, they just don't know, bro. Like, they just don't know.
When I was first doing team stuff, we all prepared for war. It's like you see a movie where they go to do a raid and turns out, oh, wow, this is a meth lab and there's 13 guys with ARs. So we're always like planning for that or the next Waco type of deal. And I had 4 mags wide, double stacked. And then, so you got 2 AR mags on top of each other, right? So it's sticking way off. So
240 rounds plus 30
about
on you?
that, yeah. I'm not going to do the math, but it was a lot. And I remember with that chest rig being so wide and with all that on there, after we hit a building, we're doing secondary buildings and stuff, and there's this little mobile home, and we go to hit that, and I can hardly fit through the damn door because it's got this little skinny itty-bitty doorway. So that was a great example of learning that your environment can change how your equipment's going to work out. And what's funny is I ended up bumping my rifle and never even noticed that I had hit my right. The only way I could think of how this happened was going into that door. I probably hung up my gun on it. But I had a Midwest Industries aluminum rear sight, and it sheared the aluminum and locked it into a 45 position. So it's like back swept like that.
That's why I like handguns.
Yeah, I didn't see it till the next day.
Yeah, that's why I like handguns. I've always loved handguns and handgun tactics because it's easily accessible, as well as knives. Like, knives are nice. But yeah, handguns and knives, I've always found a little bit more, to me at least, for me, like, it's more adaptable for like almost anything.
Do you follow Ed's manifesto?
No, what's that?
I can't think of his last name. He's been on Rogan several times, and he's done the circuit with a bunch of the big podcasters. But he was a cop in Tijuana, and I think that was like after 9/11. He became a cop there, if I remember right. But
in Tijuana?
Yeah. And
that motherfucker's got stories.
Oh, yeah. Like, that's one of those things, as this grows, I can't wait to where he would entertain coming here, because he's fascinating. And the other thing is, they would catch these cartel guys, and people would treat them like shit because they're cartel guys. He'd actually hit them with kindness. And from that, he'd find that if you're nice to people, they'll tell you how they do stuff. And it's crazy. So he goes around to the States, teaching civic classes, teaching even SWAT teams and everything, different forms of entry, lock picking, all kinds of weird stuff.
Yeah, lock picking was one of those skills when we went over it when I was at SRT, and it was like a 2-hour class. And I remember it was like, why the fuck would I want to learn how to lock pick? And then, like, I started thinking about it, and I'm like, oh shit. The problem is, once you learn how to lock pick and you look at your own house, you're like,
oh no.
Oh fuck.
Yep.
It would be so fucking easy. Like,
yep.
I had that conversation with my in-laws because I did that. I was like, it would be so easy because I have a kid, and they're like, no. And I fucking walked into the house and listened fucking 5 minutes.
Yep.
And they were like, oh shit.
Yep.
Like, what?
Yep.
So yeah, that's what I say where the paranoia comes for some people is like, knowledge is a dangerous thing, man. Like, once you understand like how to do something, it's like, oh shit, that could be done to me too. And then the a little bit of paranoia comes in. But then, with wisdom, everything has a price. Everything has a price. So
Charlie Beckwith, who is the creator of Delta Force, in his book, he talks about how they went to prisons and they would ask the guys they'd bring in cars and say, hot wire and start this car. Anyone who's good at hot wiring, right?
Yeah.
So they get the best at doing it. Who can lock pick this kind of lock, this kind of lock? And they find the guys who are the best, and they have those guys teach their techniques to the CAG guys.
That's how the military in general is. The military in general has always, at least from my experience, was you want to have the person who can do it as efficiently as possible, and then they can teach everybody, because that way now it becomes a skill to be a better soldier. I don't know how things are nowadays, but from what I've heard, it's not like that in the regular army. Maybe in Spec Ops, which I have no fucking clue how that works. But for us, it was like, what can we learn that'll make me a better soldier, that I can justify it? And like, there was a bunch of classes like that. Like, I remember, like, dude, I don't know how people have their cell phones nowadays and shit, but I never had time, man. Like, I don't know, man. It's a different world now, I guess. Yeah. It's a different world.
I gotta have a restroom break.
Yeah, so, do your thing, Bobby, do your thing.
That cricket, I want to get him out of here. I saw him a minute ago. Come here, little guy. Come on.
Dude, we're trying not to kill you.
Yeah, I'm trying to be respectful.
Trying.
I'll let you live a couple more days.
Until a cat finds you.
Right? It's like, no, don't throw me back out there. And we're back. Interpreting.
Yeah.
Let's dive into
my job. So do you know the difference between an interpreter and a translator? Or have you ever used an interpreter or a translator?
I have to think about it, but yeah, reading versus listening. Is that right?
Kind of, sort of. One is oral, the other one is written. Interpreting is oral, translating is written, right?
So when you're translating, that's you writing or reading writing?
Writing.
Okay.
Writing. When you're doing now there's 3 ways that you can interpret, right?
Put mine over the airplane because I can't tell between you or
so there's 3 ways that you can interpret: is simultaneous, continuous, and then a side translation, right? Simultaneous is when you're talking and I'm talking at the same time for the LEP. The LEP is basically a limited English proficient or limited English person. Anybody who has limited English, or it's not their first language, or they don't have a mastery of a language, is considered an LEP, right? So then continuous is where you talk, the interpreter talks, the LEP talks. The interpreter talks, you talk, the interpreter talks, the LEP talks. Okay. And then a side translation is basically where I'll grab a document without knowing what it is. I'll read it, and then I'll tell you what the document says verbatim. So those are the 3 ways that you can interpret. And then translating, there's tricks and tips that we can get into. The legality as to why you need interpreters and stuff like that, or language specialists, is because it's one of God's given rights that we have in the United States that they really push forward. There's something called Executive Order 13166, which is basically an amendment it's an executive order that was added to the Civil Rights Act of the 1960s or 70s. And what it basically indicates is that if you receive federal funding and you do not provide language access so that everybody is fair to play, then you're violating that person, and it's a form of discrimination, which natural origin, it would be like their origin, natural origin. Discrimination against language would be natural origin.
So that's discrimination that's constantly everywhere still today. Then.
Yeah, because the problem, you want to see how I'm going to make a lot of attorneys money? I'm going to give you the clue right here. And I said this in Ian Bick's podcast, and I know for a fact there's been attorneys that have hit me up for this. Go to a school and check what they do with the money that they get for language access. Because every school has to have language access if they receive federal funding. So go to a school and tell me how many parents that are LEPs receive language access help.
What is the bare minimum that they can do legally for that? Like, can they use apps that terp for you?
No. You have to provide someone. The Executive 131 dictates that you have to provide someone that can facilitate the communication between an LEP and another individual. Now, here's the thing with apps. I understand that we're in a society that lives with apps. Apps will never replace interpreters so far. So far, it will never happen. Because what the job of an interpreter is to be able to break the language barrier while promoting the flow of communication between one or more individuals in order for you to be able to understand or be able to move on from said things. The problem with apps is that it gives you this for that. Apps, a lot of apps do not take into account linguistical differences, cultural differences, synonyms. It doesn't take slang into account.
Yeah.
It also doesn't take dialect into account. And on top of that, it also does not take one of the most important factors. It does not take regions. So if I'm from Puerto Rico, and I talk...
Sorry.
No,
is
go ahead,
inflection part of this too? Like if
No,
you're...
because your inflection basically comes. It's like a dance, right?
Right.
Like if I talk to someone from Puerto Rico, pues yo te voy a hablar de esta manera para que tú me puedas entender, right? You see the inflection about how I don't roll my R's, right? The R kind of sound like the French R. But if I'm talking to someone from Mexico, pues mira, me vas a tener que entender para poder hablarte de esta manera. So there's a different inflection that I hit. But the thing is at the end of the day, it's the words that are coming out of my mouth.
Okay, if a guy is saying, "Oh, he's a great guy," and he's saying it in sarcasm,
But in what context?
right?
So the problem is, like, in order for you to have effective flow of communication, there's a few things you have to have. Number one, you have to have context. Number one, you have to have vocabulary, right?
Right.
That's number one. Number two, you have to have context of the situation. Because if you have no context of what's going on, and you say, he's a great guy, ese tipo está brutal, you know? But if you meant sarcastically, right, then I have to repeat what you're saying in the same tone.
Okay,
Now,
so you do match the inflection.
You do. Oh, yeah, I do personally.
I was wondering
Because
if that would be a legal issue in court because
it is.
You're changing.
It is. Because here's the thing.
That's tricky.
Because here's the thing, right? Did you or did you not kill this person? Ay, pues mira, yo lo maté. Ah, well, I killed him. Do you see how much you're losing there?
Oh,
like,
yeah,
you can tell that that's what happened. But at the end of the day, if we're on a jury or something, like you have to be able to, and obviously it doesn't have to be like that. Like 90 Day Fiancé is a show that I love to watch.
It's great. I actually watch it.
Fucking love because that fucking show makes me feel so good about my life.
That's cool.
Like I'll have a shit day, like, man, I'm just doing horrible, and then I'll sit down and watch that show and be like, I'm doing all right. Like I'm doing pretty good. My culture shock is not that bad, you know? I'm not some white chick trying to date a blind guy from Lagos that is a Muslim. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like not that that's bad, but it's like my life could be way worse and way more difficult.
Right.
So one of the things I love about that show is that they are now hiring interpreters. And there's a scene that I fucking love where it's this black lady that she does voodoo. And I can't remember. And the dude is from, oh my God, I can't remember. He's from Central America, I think. And they're talking about finances. And the guy goes, how much? And you see the interpreter go, how much? And I'm like, yes, yes, you find me that fucker. Because that dude knows what he's doing. And here's the other thing is there's ethics that you have to follow, right? So as an interpreter, you are not allowed to talk to me. Because everything that you say, I have to repeat. Everything. If you ever go, and this is for people listening, if you ever go somewhere and someone says they're a fucking interpreter and they don't know the difference between interpreting and translating or simultaneous and continuous, that person's not an interpreter. That's just a motherfucker that speaks a little bit of Spanish and thinks they know. Right. They may have good vocabulary, but if you can't explain to me, like you would to a child, what you do, you have no fucking clue what you're doing, number one. Number two, when you're working, you are a ninja. You are a fly on the wall. If you look at any picture of any two political parties or people from different countries, you see that the picture's always cropped at the edge. You ever notice that? That's because the fucking interpreter's behind that, right? So the interpreter has two things. Another thing, if they say they're an interpreter and they don't have a notebook with them, they're full of shit. Because you have to take notes. You have to take notes. There's no fucking way you have to take notes. If you're a medical interpreter, you have to have HIPAA training. If you're an interpreter with giant laser guns and you're not some way or form trained or credited with HIPAA, or you haven't taken a 60-hour medical course, 40-hour medical course, you are a fucking liability to the hospital.
Dude, a medical interpreter, and you're having to learn 2 languages, and you're having to learn the medical languages.
So hold on. Remember I told you I'm going to make attorneys rich,
Ooh,
right?
yeah.
Tell me how many hospitals in here provide
dude.
like... Okay, so then
Yeah.
here's the thing. What they do is they provide OPI, which is over the phone interpreting. Great. It's an asset that you can use. I've done it. I got crazy stories of doing OPIs. But the problem is that how do you know that that is a secure line, number one?
Yeah.
Secondly, how do you know that that interpreter understands the bare minimum about HIPAA? Like, have they signed a paper that says that? Have they gotten HIPAA training? Fuck no. And then thirdly, right? The insurance companies are now getting wind of this, and now they're hiring more interpreters because people are starting to wake up like, oh, this is a huge liability. Because you can't just let a family member like go interpret because they're not going to have the capacity to do it. And number two, even if they did have the capacity, you're emotionally compromised. As an interpreter, you have to literally remain stoic.
That's
like,
wild.
You can't just be like, if I'm okay. So I'll give this example. I did a case where it was a child trafficking case, where the girl was telling how she got kidnapped and sold, and then ended up in a facility in Texas, not a detention facility, in a facility in Texas, and she ended up getting out of the facility some way somehow, and ended up in Missouri. First of all, that's a wild story, because if you think about it, she literally went from multiple countries, molested and everything that happened to her. And then she came over here. And the sibling is like, I don't really give a fuck because I'm an American. That's not going to happen to me. And everyone in the room is laughing. And I'm sitting there like just looking around. And I'm like not trying to like show anger or anything.
Right.
Because again, I have to be a neutral party, right? Got to be stoic as shit. So then the other thing is let's say we're in a trial, right? And the defense attorney hired you as an interpreter. Okay? You're a court interpreter, whatever the fuck that is. You are supposed to be there. And you start talking when no one else is talking. What does that look like? It looks like you're giving advice. Are you a fucking interpreter? Or are you the attorney? Are you a paralegal? No, shut the fuck up. That's why you see me like when I go to a place, I will not talk to the person. Like as soon as I leave, good afternoon, good day, thank you.
Right.
God bless you. God bless you. God bless you too. That's it, just because I'm polite. In a medical setting, the point of an interpreter is to facilitate the flow of communication, right, between the patient and the provider, or the providing team that is giving care to that person. As long as I stay within, and there's like 3 other things we're not going to get into because I'd be here. I had to teach the 60 course forever, right? I have to teach the 60 course to you, the 60-hour course to you. As long as you maintain within those boundaries, cool, because you're there to be able to help the patient because you are part of the providing team. So what most people don't understand is they think that because you're an interpreter that you can just do whatever. Clear example, never, ever, ever ethically stay in a room with a person of the other gender. Why is that? Because ethically that's not right. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what that person's going to say. And people might say, well, Richard, not everybody's mean or whatever. It's not about being mean. It's about the perception that you're giving off as an interpreter is that you cannot do that. You are there to simply provide interpretation. You're not there to have a conversation. You're not there to do shit else. Now, when the LEP's not around, I always tell people like, hey, if you're a business owner, be smart, educate the client. Because part of my work nowadays is educating people about it. This is why I tell, like, you're going to see an influx of attorneys suing schools, hospitals, places that they provide OPI, but then, like, yeah, they're providing it, but it's not being used. Why is it not being used? Because it doesn't fucking work. So if it doesn't work, what are you doing with the money that you get for federal grants for language services? Because that comes from a pot.
Okay, yeah.
You see where I'm going with it? Mm-hmm. Especially the schools. Tell me how many school interpreters are in this area.
Not enough. You're kidding me.
There's 4 of us that speak Spanish. I know all 4 of them. I'm one of them.
That's crazy. See,
But here's the thing. How many of those do the schools use? And then here's the other thing. The other problem is, well, I can just use AI. Let me tell you about something that happened for a school that I interpreted one time, okay? I got a call one day from a school. It was an OPI over the phone. And, no, my bad. Not that one. I got a call one day to go to a school, okay? This was many, many years ago. And when I got to the school, the cops are there. I'm like, oh shit. And they show me a letter that, which I'm not going to repeat. They showed me a letter that basically, to give you the gist, it said, I'm going to fuck you up. And when they put it on Google Translate, what it said is, I'm going to kill you. So they called the cops. Turns out that the two students were in love with each other and they were talking about hooking up, is what they were trying to say. So you understand how dangerous that could be? You could have ruined someone's life all because you decided to trust a fucking machine where you can literally go online in 417, type in Spanish interpreter, and I guarantee you if you pull up your fucking phone, I'm the #1 thing that pops up, Language Ninja Solutions. And you can just make a phone call in a consultation and be like, hey, we need for this, right? And that's the problem that we have, is that people don't understand how detrimental that is. Another thing that people do, they let the kids talk. Bro, I had a kid that was telling their mom, this is over the phone, one over video one. This kid was telling their parent that a 5 meant that they were the best. And a 1 meant that, and a 1 and a 2, like the lower the number, the worse they were. So he had like 3s and 5s. And when I'm interpreting it, the parents are like, oh, espera un momentico, pero ¿qué dice? But what does it say? I'm like, no, 5, good. And I look around and I go, no. And bro, all I saw is, if you ever see a Hispanic person go like this and look at their kid, bro, that kid's going to get an ass beating as soon as they get home. That kid's going to get his ass whipped. They're going to get the chancla like 24/7. It's going to come at that kid like a 240, just getting smacked in Vietnam's of Vietnam, bro. Because you're lying. You're lying. And then the problem is that the teachers don't give a fuck. But it's not the teacher's fault. It's the administrative side. It's not the hospital's fault. It's the administrative side. Because people want to fucking cut costs. It's not the court's problem. It's that the courts don't want to pay the fuck up because they think that it's up to the LEP to provide it, where in the law it says it is not up to the LEP to pay for the fucking service if you provide it. Now, the way that people circumvent that is they go to people and they go, you don't really need an interpreter. And here's the problem with that. That's fine. You can say that. I'm all for that because I don't want to be somewhere. Like, I'm in a position now where I have specific clients. I don't want to be somewhere that's going to be uncomfortable and I have to teach you too much. That's why nowadays when a company comes to me, what I do nowadays, my role is I create an interpreting program for you, for a company, so that way they know. An example, this was like the most fun one I ever did. I had a company that they do aquariums. And bro, they were doing this aquarium for a guy. It was like a private aquarium in his house in LA. And he wanted all of the information about the fish. He wanted it translated. And he had a little pamphlet and shit. And bro, that was like the coolest thing ever. Because as an interpreter, you are judged and your rates are judged based upon experience, certificates, time, and then how much can you teach. Because I can sit here and interpret things all day, but no one's going to pay more than 15 cents a word. No one's going to pay, more than probably 10 cents a word. No one's going to pay more than $100 an hour for services. So I have to be able to teach, which that's how you supplement that. So one of the things that people don't understand is that you, as an interpreter, you are constantly educating clients as to why you need to utilize me. And a lot of times, like I have a client in town, dude, they do shoulders and they do PT, and I don't want to name them. I smoke cigars with this person, and I have another client that he does dental work. And dude, that dude will pay me my rate because he knows that when I show up, in years that he's been using me, he's never had an issue with a client. The conversation flows. He understands what to do. But that's because me as the interpreter, I took time to say, okay, listen, when a patient comes, don't fucking talk to me. Don't look at me. Don't try to ask me about an interview. Because the problem I have is after the Ian Bick interview, like most people now when they research me, if you run my name, the Ian Bick interview pops up. And Ian Bick is huge. He has millions of followers. So people sometimes want to ask questions. And it's like, yeah, I don't have the time right now. Could we please do this later? And dude, clients like that, where I show up, I get paid. They know how to deal with me. Sometimes they want to talk after the LEP is gone because I'm a business owner. Absolutely. But here's the thing. I keep it to business because I also don't want to seem like I'm favoritizing people. And it's not in the legal field anyways, because the legal field, to me, the years that I did, which we can talk about that, well, I learned a lot, but I made virtually no money because attorneys are very iffy about paying that. And some attorneys know that, oh, well, we didn't have a contract. We didn't have this. Well, you said this. And then they'll just play this game. And some attorneys just don't answer at all. So I lost tens of thousands of dollars during that tenure. Whereas a medical interpreter, bro, people don't want to piss you off because they know that there's less than 50,000 certified interpreters between both. So do you really want to piss off one of us, especially one who's well known, that people take his course and he's a trained the trainer? No, because if I say, hey, this person did this to me, or like, I don't say that. What I say is, I have nothing nice to say. Like, I have nothing nice to say about that client. Oh, shit. Well, I don't want to deal with that.
Right.
So, like, that's the thing that people don't understand is that if you receive federal funding, you fucking have to. You fucking have to. Now, here's the thing. Are there exigent circumstances? Abso-fucking-lutely. You're not going to have an interpreter on your staff 24/7, which I get that. But, dude, some people don't even research. Like, some people don't even research at all. So when I started my business, part of the problem that I had was, like, explaining to people. Because I had the DOPT and I had the CTP, the Certified Translator Professional thing. Which, it's basically you take a test, you pay to take the test, they grade it, they give you your certificate, you're a certified translator. I will tell you this, less than 50% of the people that take the test pass it. So it's a high fail rate, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I'm saying 50%, but I'm being nice about it. You know, with the Army one, like the Army one was a 3-hour fucking test that was like over 200 fucking questions. And I was like, shit, and I passed that. So now I'm finishing up on my medical one, which now I have the training, which is the 60-hour one and the HIPAA and stuff like that. So I can go into the hospital and explain. But still, even then, I'll ask, hey, what are we doing? Well, hey, we're gonna do a checkup on the internal and external rotation of their shoulder. Perfect. Thank you so much. I know the vocabulary that I have to do. So, like, people don't understand the intricacies of, like, what it's like to be an actual fucking interpreter. They just think that I know a language, so I can do it.
Right.
Like, no, that's not even remotely close to what you're supposed to do, man.
Dude, it's so clear you're an educator. And so, in your everything about you right now, your presence and everything, you can tell this is a real passion for you.
Well,
so
it's not even about passion. It's an obsession with it. Like everything that I do, like everything that I've told you about, I'm greatly obsessed with. Like jiu-jitsu, we haven't even talked about jiu-jitsu. And like the thing that people don't understand is once you've seen what something like, dude, like my mentor is Gustavo Negrete. Gustavo Negrete was just finished his term as the president of CCHI, which is the Medical Interpreting Qualifying Board for the entire fucking United States. That's who my mentor is. Do you think that if I fuck up, that dude's not gonna know what I did?
Right.
In a fucking heartbeat, he will know what I did. And guess what? He could probably, not that he would, but you know, he could probably make a phone call, be like, hey, pull his fucking certificate. Yeah. So dude, I have to have like a greater standard. The problem is people take that as, oh, well, that's not really how we do things. No problem. Just understand that there's another side of what happens with interpreters, which happens to me quite frequently, where I'll get a phone call from an attorney being like, hey, we need to do a deposition about interpreting and we need a subject matter expert. Okay, for what? Well, we have a person that was not given language access and blah, blah. And who are you representing? The company? And I'll ask him, like, what is it that we need to talk about? And sometimes, oh, well, we need to sign an NDA. Listen, motherfucker, you can explain to me a situation without having me sign an NDA. You can explain to me a situation like, we are representing the company. Did the company provide language access? Oh, we can't say. I have nothing to say to you. Because I don't want to be on the other side of like, oh, well, I'm trying to defend the company. Because then the company's going to be pissed at me. And that's what people don't understand is like, you have to really understand what's going on.
It's tough.
And it's very tough because companies sometimes, like I know automatically when a company is too much back and forth and they don't like how I do shit. Perfect. No problem. You have a good day. God bless you. I hope you find somebody. And now that, you know, I'm in this world a little bit more, I tell people all the time, like, dude, like, be careful who you do business with. Be very careful who you do business with. And I'm always real adamant, like, I tell people all the time, like, it would be so easy for me to take a town and just do everything in Spanish. Everything. From your training manuals to your, like, I I had a company like months ago that they called and they're like, we want a bid to get, I shit you not, it was what's the construction thing? OSHA.
OSHA.
OSHA. They're like, we want the OSHA shit translated. And I was like, what? They're like, yeah, we need you to, dude, I'm about to save you a lot of time. There it is in Spanish. Because OSHA has all their shit in multiple languages. And the lady was like, oh my God, dude, I had people wanting to charge me 10 grand to translate all these 600 and something pages. But that's the thing that I'm talking about, like shady people like that. Another thing is, there's people in different areas that in this state that are claiming to work, be an interpreting agency, but they themselves don't even have an SOP on how to be a fucking interpreter or how you should conduct yourself as an interpreter. So like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Because the problem that you're going to have, and this is going to come because it's already started, is you're going to start having a bunch of lawsuits of people that are like, that's not what the interpreter said. And then what's going to happen? That's really difficult to prove. You want to see how easy I do this in a deposition if I was an attorney? What are your qualifications and or training for you to claim to be an interpreter? Well, I know Spanish. Cool. What else? How did you learn Spanish? Oh, I learned it growing up. Oh, you learned it growing up? How do you know medical lingo? Well, like, dude, it's so easy for you to make one of these cases stick that attorneys don't realize the millions of dollars that are there on just suing people for that. And I said this on the big podcast when I did it, and like I've had like 3 or 4 attorneys contact me. Yeah. Hey, my client was at this clinic. The clinic is federally funded. And I love clients like that because I'll be like, okay, cool. Here's the law, and I literally just send you Executive Order 13166, Title 6 of the Civil Rights Act, and then there's another one which is I can't remember, it'll come to me, but it's like a new one that passed recently where you have to be able to provide it. And like that's the thing that people don't get is like it's not an app. Cause like I've had clients that I had a client one time that they were like, okay, they were telling the LEP, so you count in English and I'll count in Spanish. And they're just trying to fuck with me. And I kind of sit back and I go, no problem. You keep doing that. One of these days you're gonna run into someone that's sue happy and they're gonna be like, hey, they didn't provide me an interpreter. She said she spoke Spanish. I didn't understand anything. Oh, but they understood me the whole time. They never asked for an interpreter because they didn't understand me when I asked it. Well, how do you know they didn't understand you? What are your credentials? Boom. Yeah. There you go. Now you're fucked. Now your insurance company has to cover this shit that you had no fucking clue about. And that it's just a fucking liability, bro. Yeah. Other countries do it. Bro, in Europe, interpreters are gods. In Japan, interpreters are treated like gods compared to how we are treated here. Obviously, the work hours are different. Obviously, I haven't worked in Japan. I've had Japanese interpreters and translators that have worked for me, and they've worked for mangas. They've worked for animation companies. You know, I had a guy on my podcast that literally translated Diablo 3. Bro, you know how cool that was to me? That's something. Do you know how cool that was to me? And he's like over there like, yeah, Rico, but you've done human trafficking cases. I go, I'll trade you, bro. Like, I'll trade you. How many hours did you play Diablo in Spanish? A lot. I'm like, okay, I will gladly trade you. But that's the thing that people don't understand. There's companies that they don't even have like an SOP. Like I helped translate PNC Banking years ago. You know PNC Banking, right? PNC Bank is a huge fucking bank. I got contracted out through another company called Transperfect, which shout out to Transperfect. They were super nice. They paid me when they said they were going to pay me, and they paid me a very good rate. And anytime that I had a fucking issue, they would call me. What happened was the contract had very specific guidelines that you had to be in the United States and able to work in the United States. And what they found out was that a dude that was helping translate, he was paying people from out of country. So guess what? When you sign into the portal to help translate the banking stuff for them, they were tracking your IP. So they started seeing IPs in Colombia, Mexico, Nicaragua, and they're like, what the fuck are you doing? So then I came in and I said, I'll translate everything. And dude, I did. It was like, I think over 200,000 words or something. And I did like the leftover, which was like probably less than 100,000. But still, like, that's the importance of that. Like banking, if I translate something in banking incorrectly and you sue me and the translation was done incorrectly, guess what? You're fucked. Like, that's what people don't understand. In a medical setting, if I translate something or interpret something that is incorrectly and you go get treatment and you die, guess what? we're fucked. In a legal setting, if I interpret something incorrectly or I translate something incorrectly, that's someone's fucking livelihood that you're fucking with. And like a lot of the courts don't understand that. A lot of the places don't understand that. Like that's why I'm so anal about like when people like try to check me with shit is like, homie, like I will smoke you any day of the week. Cops, a great example. Mm-hmm. A lot of police departments say, well, I have Spanish speaking people. Tell me when's the last time they took a refresher course. I have a free refresher course that I do. Not once have I ever heard or seen a police department take a refresher course on Spanish. When it's as easy as a 3-hour course where you learn some vocabulary, you have someone come and explain to you, and then you also add another 2-hour course of cultural shit.
Can you get that post approved?
What's
post is the law enforcement training CEUs. That's their continuing education units.
I wouldn't know. I've tried contacting 3 times because Joseph had helped me out with that, and like I never got approved. Like all my classes, I teach through a company called Transinterpreting, which that's the company that I teach with. Like this is a selfless plugin. Mm-hmm. Transinterpreting.com. I have a human trafficking class, a domestic violence class, a drug class, a Puerto Rico class, which that's a whole nother thing. A gun class where basically I sit down and I explain to you the system of it and how the interpreter fits in it and how the interpreter should be used. That's it. And they're worth CUs because they have to be approved by the state and whatnot. So all of my classes are worth at a minimum 3 CUs. I don't know what that is on posts or anything, but the thing is it's like the human trafficking class. I sent you the course. I sent you the trafficking class. Mm-hmm. Like one of the things that I was well known for back in the day was I would hang out with the law enforcement guys. And I remember I worked a case with like a trafficking unit, and the guys went out and I just sat down and asked them a bunch of shit and took a bunch of fucking notes. And the guy's like, there's a lingo with like emojis and shit like that. And this is like in 2015 that I learned this. And now I teach that because the emoji's the same fucking shit. Like it's just the same shit. Just like with drug course. Like I have the DEA post this. The DEA every fucking year literally posts like the drug slang and the drug emoji shit.
It's like the issue with cryptocurrency because you can speak in emojis and it's legal. And
but if you don't understand what the fuck it is, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like
because you got Elon posting dog, rocket, moon. You know? It's like, oh boy. And memes as well. You could do meme photos with text on them carefully.
So that's the thing that I tell people is that when you're working with these things, like you don't understand a fucking thing. It's a whole nother world. And that's part of like what I teach. Again, most of the shit that I've taught, if you dig online long enough, you'll see it. The difference is I've had to translate that shit either on a phone dump, on a wiretap that I was given, on a fucking interpretation. The phone dump, you know what that is?
Yeah.
Yeah, most people don't know what that is. Those are fun. I had one that there were so many dick pics in. Bro, when I'm talking about like slongs, like it was this guy. Oh, I never forget this.
So you're translating everything
so this is what happened. I'll never forget this. It was a wiretap that I had sat in on, and they were like, hey, interpreter, go ahead and translate this. So what you do is the way that I did it is I did it in a PowerPoint presentation. Mm-hmm. And anybody can take this, by the way. Any interpreter that's listening to this is the way to do it. Because it looks good in a deposition and it looks good when you go to court. I haven't done this in years, but this is how you do it. You basically grab a PowerPoint presentation and you open it up like if it's an Android, then you make them green. If it's an Apple, you make them blue, right? And you put the text message in another screen. And in this screen where the PowerPoint is, you're going to put the name of the person, right? The phone number. I would put the phone number that they were receiving the text and the phone number that was sending the text. And then I would literally do the translation. So that way when you look at the phone, right? At the phone record and you look at my interpretation, you put them together and you know what the fuck it says. Yep. That's the best way you can do it. It takes time, but you can charge really good money for that. Yep. So the thing is that I remember I got it and it's just like a few words and just slong dicks. Like just fucking dicks. It was the same dick, just different angles. Right. Like a soft one, a cold one. I'm hot, I'm horny, I'm in the shower. And just like tits pics and ass pics everywhere. And I was just like, bro, how the fuck do I interpret this? You don't. You just put picture, see, it's when you do a discovery, it's labeled. Right. See picture in discovery evidence number. And that was just one that I remember like when they got when they got it to court, the wife had flipped because they had told her that he was cheating on her with the courier. And when they got to court, they tried to like discredit her and shit. And like the attorney's like, why would you do that? You know, he trusted you and all this other shit. She goes, because he was cheating on me this whole time. He betrayed my trust. And the attorney was like, no further questions, Your Honor. And it's like, bro, what are you going to do? How the fuck did you not see that coming?
Right.
So like, that's the thing is like, you can do a variety of things in this field if you're just willing to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation and talk to people. The problem is that most people don't really understand the severity of it. I used to help out the PD here, Springfield. We had a runaway girl one time. And it was with a CPS case that I had seen some messages on Facebook while she was like standing right next to me. And I was like, ooh, that looks bad. Exigent circumstances. I went and told the, hey, I just want to let you know I saw this. This is what I saw. This is when I saw it. This is what it said. And then later on, when they pulled the Facebook messages, I was right. Like what I had seen, they had the Facebook messages, and the PD shows it to my house. It was this corporal, and he goes, "Are you the interpreter?" I go, "Yeah, man." I was like, "Are you cool if I'm packing?" He goes, "Nah, man. I got a shotgun and an AR in the back. Weren't you prior military?" I was like, "Yeah. Let's go fuck some shit up." And I got in the car and we went and picked up that teenager. And dude, I remember like as soon as I walked in, like the whole room like went quiet because I just stood there and looked at her. Like nobody talked, and I was like, "You can either come with us, or you can go back to Freedom's Rest." At the time was the place. And I just didn't say anything else. And like the cops were like sitting there, and she's like, "I'll go back with you." I'm like, "I'll go back with you." And then the cops started talking and shit like that. And like people don't understand like the use of it. You know, you're in a traffic stop. There's key words that you should probably listen to. You know, like dude, I'm white as shit. People talk Spanish around me all the time. They got no fucking clue that I understand them. And it's like the funniest thing all the time. As a cop, I would want to know what the fuck is around my environment, especially with the Hispanic demographic growing the way that it's growing in the next couple of years.
Right.
For whatever reason that may be, right? So that's my whole spiel with that, is that you should have a basic understanding of what the fuck is going on around you and how these things operate.
I've told this story on here already before, but it fits here. I had a friend who was in German classes, and he would always say Naturwissenschaften, which is natural sciences. He thought it was just fun, very German sounding to say, right? It's hitting a lot of those sounds. So, and that always stuck with me. And when I was in LA and I'd hear people speaking German there, because there's all kinds of tourism in that city, I'd wait till I get a little distance and I would shout it. Naturwissenschaften! And then they turn and look, because imagine you're just hearing gibberish and then someone just says natural sciences. It's so stupid, but the reaction of that was so funny. I always enjoyed that.
I've had people where I show up and like, this is just some of the funniest shit that people say to me, that they're like, "You're a little too white to be an interpreter." Just kind of look at him, and
Right.
nowadays I just don't answer. I just don't say shit. I just look at you, and it's see how uncomfortable it is right now with us.
Yeah.
Like imagine me doing that in a medical setting.
Right.
Like, it's very fucking uncomfortable.
Dude, I can only think of this as the one time that I've had to call an interpreter in law enforcement, and it was a Frenchman who didn't speak a lick of English, and he was here at the lake as DWI arrest. Dude, it took us like almost the full 24-hour holding period just to find someone who could go down to our little hick hole and speak French to this guy.
Because you don't know where to look.
Yeah,
so
and I wasn't even there when all that went down.
So I'll solve that problem for you and for anybody that's listening, right?
Yeah, that's a good one.
You want to go to CCHI, right? Just type in on Google CCHI, and then look for the directory. And then if you don't want to do that, right, because that's medical, you go to NBCMI, something like that, National Board of Certified Medical Interpreters. You go there and you go to the list, and it'll tell you who the fuck it is. Then if you want a legal interpreter, you go through the courts and you type in Missouri Language Service Providers. And there's a list of certified legal interpreters that have taken the state test. For Missouri, you don't have to be state certified to work in the courts.
Of course.
You have to be trained, which for me, I always work with government entities. Like in the courts, I just didn't do anything, because in the courts I would tell them straight up, like, you need a master certified interpreter, and I would just avoid issues like that.
Yeah.
A lot of times, and it was like I remember a few times I'd go and I was just basically telling them what was being said, and someone asked me about my credentials, and I was like, I have a high school, and this is the funny part, I have a high school diploma in Spanish. I'm originally from Puerto Rico. I have a CTP certification, certified translator professional certification. I have a DLPT certified translation from 2010 from the Army. I've taken these classes, I teach these classes, and then I go through the list. And then it's like, oh, well, shit, like, okay. Like, he knows what he's doing. But again, these are just things that it's like people don't understand, like, how bad it can go.
Right.
It just hasn't gotten there yet because it's people are settling it, and the insurance companies are now getting involved.
To me, you pitching your services feels like what it's like to pitch security services, because everyone wants the bare minimum, which is bodies.
Correct.
And that's all they're looking for security.
Yeah.
Until someone storms the stage and attacks Dave Chappelle. Then everyone starts paying attention and actually wants something and they understand those certifications.
And that's the problem. And here's the other thing. Like, if you hire someone and you want to know what they are, just ask them. Don't ask them what credentials they have. Ask them what training have they received. Mm-hmm. And if they don't tell you that they've taken any training from some sort of, dude, even if you've taken like a 3-hour certificate, like I have people that take the 3-hour training from us all the time. And they're like, dude, I got more vocabulary on that I did in college, you know? Because that's the other problem is around here, there's no college that is offering a legit translator program. No college. And if they are, I would dare to sit down and speak with any of those professors who are to tell me what type of work as an interpreter or translator they have done. Tell me what company you've helped. Tell me what organization you've helped. I can name to you Raíces, PNC Banking, CPS from Oklahoma, New Mexico, Arizona, California, Missouri, Puerto Rico, Florida, New York, DEA, FBI, DHS. So like all companies that I fucking done work for that I have also had to conduct training. Like, because you can't just think that, oh, this is just a thing. Like when you join the CCHI, which I will be here pretty soon, it's kind of like a union. I have a joke where I say it's like the union if the union was ran by the mafia. Because it's basically just a bunch of people from California that everybody says this is the standard because this standard has worked for them. Mm-hmm. So everybody follows CCHI and BCMI.
Right.
So the thing is that you have to pay your dues. And not only do you have to pay your dues, you have to take CUs. You have to take credit hours. You have to take an ethics classes, understanding ethics. What are your left and right limitations? The same way that attorneys have to take ethics classes. The same way that cops have to take, I think it's 3 or 9 credit hours a year on ethics. So, like, I've never understood why people don't think of it as a profession. They just think of it as something different. And then they meet me, and I get 2 reactions. One, people will utilize me forever, and I have a lot of clients that they use me. May not be as often, but they use me. Or you have one-time clients that they're like, I don't need perfectionism. I just need this done. Yeah. Okay, cool. Then to those clients, I say, I hope you the best. I normally recommend someone because I have friends who they have lower tiers of payments than I do, and they'll gladly take it. It may take time, and normally that's how I'll help a client. And a lot of the times they'll just come back to me because they just want training, or they have an HR department that wants to talk about, hey, we want to open up a mechanic shop in another country. Here's a list of all the services we're going to provide in a mechanic shop. How would you do this? Well, this is how I tell them. This is just free wisdom for everybody. The first thing you want to do is you have to have a marketing in place. So interpreters can help translate that marketing, right? Then what you want to do is you want to have every single pamphlet that you have available in the company from one language to another. Because now when you hire someone, you have everything translated. Mm-hmm. Now they understand what to do, right? Cleaning company. I do this for cleaning companies. I used to do this for cleaning companies all the time. Is they would have an SOP, and they would explain how to clean and like the holiday leave and everything, and then we would just translate it. And then when they go hire, they'd give them the pamphlet, and at the end of it says, if you have read and you understood all this, sign here. You understand that this is in your language. You have no questions to ask. You understand everything that has been given to you, and blah blah blah. And a lot of times people sign it. You avoid 2 things with that. Number 1, you avoid liability because you're asking them, do you have any questions? Do you need an interpreter? No. Okay, cool. So you're saying that you understand what's going on here. That way later on, if they go to an attorney, oh, well, I didn't understand it. And in a deposition, they go, what are your credentials? Absolutely.
Yep.
I have this credential, this credential,
Yep.
this credential, this credential, this credential,
Yep.
this credential.
Dude,
So it's very
yeah.
it's very easy to do. People just don't want to put the money into it.
My good friend of mine, Nicholas Giannini, he lived out in L.A., and he had an issue with cockroaches, which everybody does out there, and his building was getting riddled with them. And he'd complained, and finally the landlord had sent one of his henchmen to take care of it. And so his unit gets sprayed. And within the next 3-4 days, his body is just getting covered in some red spots.
They didn't ask him what
of this
allergies he
crazy
had.
reaction. Well, it ended up being way worse than that. The bottle of cleaning solution that was used, and this went to court and everything, but the bottle that was used was all in English, and it was a Mexican worker who didn't know how to read that. He used enough of this solution that's made for a city block in
funny.
Nick's one-bedroom apartment.
It's fucked up.
Yeah.
Funny.
And Nick had, they gave him money for all new furnishings and everything.
I'll give you one better. Okay. My dad gave me this. Miranda rights, right? Mm-hmm. Can you translate Miranda rights?
Not very well. I can try to read it.
But why is that?
Not properly trained.
It's not even properly trained. It's just that Miranda rights have to be the same everywhere. Because if I read you a different level of Miranda, or if I read someone else a different level of Miranda, it's not the same Miranda, right? So one of the things that I tell law enforcement all the time is this is basically your Miranda rights according to the U.S. Marshal Service for DOJ. It's in English. Mm-hmm. And it's in Spanish.
I used to carry one of those.
And people don't even do this.
Yep.
So years ago in California, this is a case you can look up on Google. I post this case all the time. A cop pulled someone over during a routine traffic stop for a blown out light. When he pulled the guy over, the guy was just nervous, didn't speak Spanish. He asked the guy, "Can you get out of the car and can I search the car?" But the way he had said it, which right now it evades me, was basically like, "Hey, can you get out of the car and can I look in the car?" Which search and look are two very fucking different things, okay? So when it went to court, he arrested the guy and he Google translated the Miranda rights. The dude had 5 pounds of weed in the back, had 2 keys of coke, and he had about a 20-pound bag of pills. The dude not only got out of that, but he sued the fucking police department and won. All because they didn't want to fucking look up what the fuck shit was.
That's crazy.
That's what I tell people all the time. Like, you might spend a little more.
So he punched it into a translator.
He punched it into a translating machine.
That's nuts. It's like we pretty
what
much
the fuck
all
is this,
have
Russia?
those cards. Yeah, everyone I know has always had that in their wallet. I got in 2007, and I think I took it out of my wallet maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
I would venture any law enforcement in this state to tell me if they have this in English and in Spanish. And I guarantee you the answer is no. That's why later I'll be posting a picture of this.
That'd be cool.
But that's one of the things that I tell people, like, you don't really understand what you're getting into until someone really understands what they're doing. And then you have a massive lawsuit, and then guess what happens? It's just like what anything, dude. It's just a trend, right?
Right.
Everything is a trend. Attorneys are no fucking different. It's just a trend. Oh, what can we do to follow, the trend to make more money? Oh, this? Let's go ahead and dive in. Let's see what we can find, And that's the thing that people don't get, man. Is like I want to avoid litigation at all possible. So that's why when I do a consultation with someone, I sit down and I go, listen, if I have to teach you too much, bro, it's not worth my time. Because if I have to sit here and do all this, it's going to take months. If you have the money, awesome. 90% of the time, people don't have the money to be able to do that. If you want me to run a department or contract me to do that, that's a completely different set. If you have a department that's running, a Spanish department or a translating department, and you don't have at the bare minimum, you don't have a master list of things that you can utilize, you don't have standards and practices for what the interpreters or the translators should do, and you also don't understand how a translating and interpreting works, you're fucked. Because if you think that you can interpret for more than 2 to 3 hours, you're not human. Because if you look at, there's a study that the United States did years ago, where I got to find it, where they connected these machines to an interpreter's brain. And guess what happened when the person started interpreting? Their whole brain lit up. You understand the amount of CPU power that you have to process to be able to do for your whole fucking brain to light up? A shit ton. So like people don't understand is like that's not something you can do every day. Like I
Right.
know I can do per day by myself. I can do 3,500 words. It might take me a couple hours, but I know I can do 3,500 words. After that, dude, my brain's fried.
Right.
Like fried like a motherfucker. So that's what people don't understand is like machine translations have a use, but you have to still have that subject matter expert to say nay or shay. Because you want to use, I have no issues with machine translations. The problem is when you unequivocally just fucking use that like they do in many schools, like they do in many hospitals, like they do in many police departments, like they do in many federal buildings, like they do in many places.
Right.
And the problem with that is that it's just a ticking time bomb. It's just a ticking time bomb. And that's the thing that's happening nowadays where people don't understand that. It's like, oh, but we have this company that we use over the phone. It's like, how many times have you used them in the past year? So tell me where that federal grant money's going. Because, dude, I tell you what, you start looking into that and you're going to see a lot of people like pucker up real quick because you're like, oh, shit, we really don't have it. The problem is Hispanic people, like a lot of times they're not going to say shit. They're going to be like, whatever, fuck it. I don't care. Like, we're just playing the game along. We'll move on. But the problem is you're going to get those people who I've been around them. They'll fucking sue the shit out of you, bro. They'll find an attorney, like workers' comp and stuff like that, bro. That's why you got to be real careful as an interpreter. And you have to be real careful who you pick as an interpreter. Because you don't want just any random person that speaks the language. Because we're going in circles. It's just a liability, man.
That's wild. Let's jump over to the trafficking side of things.
Yeah. You want to learn how to traffic or?
I don't want to traffic anyone, but.
There you go. I got the laugh. All right.
At the same time, yes. Because that's the best way to learn how. Dude, there's a school. If you want to find how to discover a meth lab by walking into somebody's garage or in their house, there's a school that's taught in Iowa. And they teach cops how to make 100% pure meth.
I mean,
and those
if it smells like pee-pee from cats.
Right.
Like, people don't understand that.
Yep.
Like, smells are a big thing.
Yes.
I don't know if in Missouri smells are still probable cause or reasonable suspicion, but smells are a big thing, you know. So here's the thing with trafficking. First of all, when you're talking about trafficking, there's various aspects to it. Like, if I say human trafficking, what's the first thing that pops up to your head?
Well, I think the cliche would be sexual trafficking. Yeah.
Everybody, right?
Yeah.
There's a million things.
Way beyond
you can
that.
do human trafficking or smuggling, which basically is moving an individual from point A to point B for a commercial sex act. What is a commercial sex act? Sex for money or in exchange for this to that, right?
Right.
You also have organ trafficking, which I personally have never dealt with. It's basically where you go to another country, you go to a doctor, you wake up, your kidney's fucking gone, your heart's gone, you're missing a lung, like all this other shit. You have sex trafficking, and then you have children of war, which children of war is basically what you see in Iraq and you see in like all these films. Anime, do you know anything about anime? Okay.
Pokemon's the closest I got to that world.
You ever heard of an anime called Naruto?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that has like real guns in it, right?
No. Naruto's about ninjas.
Okay.
Naruto touches upon child trafficking and
Interesting.
children of war, because in Naruto, all the villages in the beginning are at war against each other. And who do they train to be ninjas?
Yeah.
The kids, right? And then they use some of the kids to give to other villages to be able to put demons inside of them. And again, this is just a very specific thing, but this is a subject that's covered in Naruto that people never fucking understand,
Right.
you know? So my first experience with trafficking was in Iraq. We had a situation where we were checking on some checkpoints, and one day we go in early in the morning, and I get out of the car with Sergeant Charles, and I see like a little bit of like a trail of blood coming out of one of like the little checkpoint boxes.
Mm-hmm.
And I pull up, and like as soon as I pull up, I start approaching, and I see both of our guys, both of the IPs that we had left there a few days before. One's got a shot right here in this area, and the other one, the bullet like hit him too. There was 2 shots. And this happened for like a little while, for like a week or so. And one day we're at a checkpoint, and in Iraq, the cool thing is you won't see women driving and you don't see kids driving. And I say cool in the sense of like, it's really easy to look at everybody and go, oh, that's a woman driving. That's out of the ordinary. Why is that happening? oh, that's a child driving. That shouldn't be happening. What's happening? And I saw the kid, looked like a fucking kid. So I pull up to the kid and I go, Habibi Jinsia, which means my friend, show me. And the kid like looks at me and he has his hands up and he starts reaching down. And as soon as he starts reaching down, like I pull up. So me and Sergeant Charles like approach him. And thinking back now, I always say that it's crazy because I should have like probably pulled back because he could have been fucking reaching for a detonator.
Right.
And when we pull up, I come in and he like puts his hands up. Doesn't say shit. We just get out of the car. We clear everything. At that point, when you're extracting somebody like that, you want to get the fuck out really quickly. Because you don't know if someone's scanning you. You don't know if someone has a sniper there. You don't know if it's a trap for them to put propaganda out saying Americans are beating our children, you know?
Right.
Which was unfortunately a thing that happened a lot of times in Iraq and Afghanistan, man, where kids got killed. And we just took him back to the station. He had a bunch of Jinsias, which Jinsia is like this little piece of paper that will tell you, hey, you can cross to this Mahala, to this Mahala, and to this Mahala, which is basically the villages, right? Think of counties. That's the best way I can describe it. And we get him into they get him into the interrogation room. And this is one of the few times we sat and saw it. Normally, if they showed, if we brought like a dog or something, they were scared of dogs, like really terrified of dogs. And dude, one way or another, they figured out that he spoke English based upon his body language. And he's like, I am here to commit murder against America. And he told the story of how he was just a kid and he was like the oldest one in his you know, Mahala, and fucking Jam at the time. I think it was Jam or Al Qaeda, which I can't remember what fucking Jam stood for. It evades me. And they just took him and just trained him. And they taught him how to shoot. They taught him how to kill. He's like, his first kill was when he was young, like a teenager. And he fucking, you know, later on CID got their ballistics and they did whatever the fuck they do. And they're like, no, that's the murder weapon for all these other guys. And that was like my first experience with it. And like, it didn't really bother me at the time because so much shit is happening that later on when you go through therapy, you start unpacking shit. It wasn't until like 2019 that I remembered that because I was in therapy and I was talking to somebody about a case that I was doing about these kids that the mom was prostituting their daughters. And she's like, you know, what was that the first time? And I'm like, no, you know, when I was in Iraq. And then it fucking dawned on me and it just like bothered me so much because he's just a fucking kid. Like, he just doesn't know better. You know what I'm saying? Like, they don't fucking know better. And then in 2017, when I started my business, my whole goal has always been to teach people Spanish. It's just to teach people Spanish or help your business do like a translation. That's always been like my goal. Just because it's more fun for me. There's good money that way. And I know how to do it in a way where it's like, hey, it'll be this much. It'll be done by this much time. I have a good enough team that when things like that happen, we can split the work and it gets done efficiently. And I have a team of people that I trust really, really good. You know, and having Gustavo as an asset and as a mentor is fucking huge, you know? And I remember one night I was sleeping and I was in my now wife had stayed over and my phone was going off at all times. And I never told my wife like what I did. She's like, what do you do? It's like, I'm an interpreter. For the schools? Yes. That was it. Which I was doing school interpreting because when you remove a kid or they're trafficked, you have to put them in school anyways.
Right. And
it was a church. And they call and they're like, hey, you know, we got someone here that they're speaking Spanish. And they're like all over the place. Like clearly this person's distressed because they saw this girl that walked into the church screaming, help me, ayúdame, ayúdame, help me. And I'm like, hey man, just how did you hear from me? And they're like, oh, we went on Google and like you were like the first thing that popped up. Perfect, go ahead and put her on the phone. And she's like, hey, help me, they're trying to sell me. And I was like, oh, that's let's stop right here. Go ahead and call the cops and let them know you know, hey, this is what it's probably happening. She said this. Let them know exactly what she said. And like I always told you in the beginning, I always have a notebook. So I wrote down the date, the church, and I wrote down the information, took a screenshot of my call, and I was like, that'll be a deposition later. And later at like 6 o'clock, I get like 6 or 7, I get a fucking phone call. And they're like, hey, my name is so-and-so with this PD. we hear that you are an interpreter, blah, blah, blah. Do you have any credentials? And at that time, I still had like an active security clearance. I had a background check conducted by the schools. I had done fingerprinted. I'd done all this other shit, like just to be around those type of things. And I go, yeah, absolutely. Do you need me? I'll be on my way. All right, well, just start charging us right now. I'm like, all right. And then on the way there, I didn't know what the fuck I was going to charge. I was charging like $25 to $20 an hour back in the day when I was doing these. And I get there and they like read me in. And I say read me in, but basically they sit me outside and they explain to me what's going on. They're like, hey, we can't talk about this, blah, blah, blah. And it felt like I was like in a wire room again. Like, oh, okay, this shit. Like, I get it. And when I walked in, I heard her voice and I like paused and I fucking pulled the AUSA to the side and I go, hey, just so you know, I think this is the girl that I interpreted for this morning. And I pull up my notebook and he goes, yeah, we got your information from the church. I go, well, ethically, I have to let you know I've interpreted for this person. Is that a problem? It's not a problem. I just have to ethically let you know that I've already interpreted for this person. Right. Oh, okay, no problem. And then from there, it's just like, you know, this attorney, this paralegal, this and that, this and that, and this and that. And next thing you know, like, I have fucking hundreds of fucking cases. And it was really weird because no one really knew, like, what the fuck I was doing except, like, a handful of people.
Yeah.
And it was, like heart-wrenching because it was in the end, at the long run, it was, people tried to utilize that against me in court and everything. And for me, the last nail on the coffin was when I had a case here in town where the woman was being held against her will. And this is just a wild fucking one. We end up going to the hospital because she was, I never forget, she was 105.6 pounds and just a skinny little thing. And we get to the hospital and, you know, they're doing blood tests, they're checking, because she's like, bro, you can see like her ribs. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And we get in there and it was a friend of mine from jiu-jitsu that checked her up because she was a domestic violence victim and they thought she was a trafficking victim because what was happening is people were seeing her walk at night from this one house, but only at night. And the cops were being told, hey, there's this woman that walks at night with no shoes and she has a phone and she looks terrified. Again, if you see something, say something. Walking out in the middle of the night, no fucking shoes, looking around panicky, not dressed for the weather, looks deadly sick, and has a phone that she's clutching on like it's her, like it's the last fucking, like it's the last candy in the jar, you know? Mm-hmm. And Lori Lundberg, which, bless her heart, she died a few years ago, calls me and she goes, hey, I need you over here. So I was at an open mic in downtown and I get the call to go and I immediately start going to the domestic violence shelter, which was in Ozarks, called Freedom's Rest. I don't think it's there anymore. I don't think. And the cops are there, everybody's there, and like she's not understanding what the fuck is going on. Her English is very fucking like almost non-existent. Right. And she starts telling the stories like, I came here, you know, blah blah blah. They took my passport, they took my IDs, they say they keep it for safekeeping, but they keep me downstairs. They used to keep me chained up, and she had marks on her fucking wrists from the chains. And I was like, oh yeah, this fucking looks, you know, like it. And the woman, like, they start trying to interrogate the woman. One thing that I tell people is, like, you have to understand what you're dealing with, and you have to give people some sort of space. Because it's like when I'm interpreting for kids, right? When I'm interpreting for kids, a lot of times I make myself very little. Or I'll, like, kneel down. Mm-hmm. Because I want the kid to understand, like, you know, as a kid, everything you have to look up to. Yeah. You know, everything is fucking terrifying. The last thing I want is for them to be terrified of the interpreter. Even though they can't fucking talk to me, I don't want you to be terrified of me. So next day, you know, she says, hey, I just really need to sleep. Like, I haven't slept. They're like, yeah, no problem. At this point, it's like 1 or 2 in the morning. And the next day we wake up and Lori's like, hey, we need to get her checked in a hospital. I don't know where to take her. I said, let me check. So I called one of the guys at jiu-jitsu and he goes, yeah, my wife's a doctor. You know, let me call. And I got there and like this person like never really was a fan of me because she's like, he's always so goofy and weird. And when she saw me, I just walk up and I'm like this. And she's like, hey, please don't address the interpreter. Please address the LEP only. oh, okay. And come to find out, she was fucking 5 months pregnant. And dude, that broke me. That fucking broke me. Because at that time, I was about to be a dad, or I think I was a dad already. And that just like fucked me up. Because I just could, it had fucked me up originally, but I would just drown my sorrows by myself. Like, my thing wasn't like heavy drinking or weed. My thing was just cigars. So like my expense in cigars was fucking ridiculous. And I would just sit outside and I'd throw shit in the fire and I'd just stare at the fire for fucking hours, like of the morning. My girl never knew at that time. So then we end up, like, I don't know what ended up happening with her, because unfortunately as an interpreter, you don't get to see the end of everything. But that was the last case that I ever fucking did. That just like, I was like, nah, dude, like I can't do this anymore, because my dad had a saying. He's like, when you start taking things personal and you start wanting to hurt people, that's when you need to stop. And like, I had felt that because I had a case here in town that, I don't want to mention the apartment complex, but there was an apartment complex that a woman killed herself. She hung herself. And before she hung herself, I was called a few days before because her windows were full of papers, like court papers and notes from, hey, my husband beats me, my husband does this, here's the evidence. So I had to climb on a fucking ladder, and I'm like looking at what the paper says that's glued to the fucking window, translating to the cops and to Lori Lundberg what's happening. And she wouldn't answer her door. And a few days later, I get a call from the apartment complex manager. He goes, hey man, she's not answering her phone, and I hear the phone in her room. And dude, like I just know, because I've had people, unfortunately, I've found people, you know, they hung themselves before. And we fucking go in, and like, you know, we're calling for her, and I'm saying things in Spanish, and she had put up like a couple new pieces of paper. And the apartment complex manager is like, I don't know what's wrong. And like the cop gets there from Springfield PD, and the cop looks at me and he goes, you're the interpreter? I go, I'm the interpreter. And the apartment complex manager tries to open the door, and when he pushes the door, it was blocked by a couch, and the smell hit me. And me and the cop just like look at each other, and I like go like this, and he goes down, and he starts calling medic. Yep. He starts calling for a coroner and everything. And the apartment, I'm gonna go in, and I say, please don't go in. And dude, he went in, and when he walked out, like, dude, you see it. Like someone who's never seen a dead body, the first one they see, you know how it is, they're all pale because their heart is trying to like conserve it because they're in shock. And I told the dude, I said, you need to sit down. Like, you need to come. She's like, she was just there, like in the closet. It's like, I opened the closet and like I saw it, and I'm like, yeah, man, like this is sad, you know? And like that was one of the times that I was like really, really fucking angry, because I felt like I should have said something and I didn't. And I felt like really fucking bad about it. And that was just the two like times that I'd like remember I was like fucking angry about it. And I was angry about the child ones, but like the kids at least got the help, you know? Like they were getting, the state of Missouri has done a lot of stuff for, I will say this about Missouri. I criticize attorneys and I shit on attorneys a lot because of my own personal experiences, but I will also say this. Missouri has done a very good job of like, when you get caught fucking around with child trafficking, Missouri will fuck you up. Missouri will fuck you up legally, bro. They will fucking deport your ass, and they don't give a flying fuck. I had a guy that I translated for his deportation hearing. I translated his papers. I translated everything. And it was a child trafficking case. And the dude was going to get sent back to his country, and he was getting letters sent to his attorney from the kid's family saying, we're going to fuck you up when you get here. And I remember translating it, and I would do a translation. I get put on the stand. It's like, hey, what does this mean? How do you know that this words mean that? Well, how do you know that this word goes here? And I'm literally having to explain to this fucking asshole defense attorney, which again, he's doing his job.
Right.
Well, how does this verb go here? How do you know that it goes here? Motherfucker, do you want me to explain to you how Spanish works? Like, are you fucking serious? And I had to explain that. And dude, sure as fuck, they deported that guy. They did not give a fuck. Yeah. And he had fucking straight up threat letters like, as soon as you get here, bro, we can't fucking wait, bro. Right. And they didn't give a fuck. And that was just one of those things that I did that from 2017 to 2021. 20 and 21 was not as prevalent. Like there weren't many cases. It was more like either a video that I got, or it was more kind of like a phone call that I would get that I would have to interpret what the conversation was saying, because people record shit all the time. But those were like the instances that I remember that was just fucked up, that I never forget. And then I had a lot of domestic violence cases where it was like a spouse that was here on a visa and whatnot, and you know, the dude ended up changing his mind, whatever. There's a million variables here, and then domestic violence would happen. And I remember one in Ozarks, I think it was, that I took an intern with me, and we were in court, not in court, we're in the attorneys, or in court or something, and we're showing the pictures because he pushed her, and she hit her head. Yeah, he had pushed her out in the yard, she hit her head, and he got in his truck. And when she started to get up, they had a video of it. He backs up and he breaks her fucking leg in 3 spots, and she had a compound fracture. So I'm interpreting like her screaming, "Stop, para, déjame, mi pierna, my leg, stop." And my intern fucking walks out of the courtroom puking.
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm like sitting there, and I'm like, what the fuck is this bitch's problem? But she came back in like a boss. And that was like the first time, because of her, that I was like, oh, I'm desensitizing myself to this. Like, I shouldn't be this comfortable with seeing this type of shit, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, man, like those were just like a lot of the cases that I had. And then we had I was the interpreter for a case here where a prison guard was having sex with the Hispanic inmates. And the prison had called me and made me sign an NDA and everything. It's like, hey, you can't say. And they had cameras from the inmates talking to each other. And they're like, tell me what they're saying. And I'm like doing a simultaneous interpretation. Oh, and I remember like, he's got a big dick. He's like, you go around this spot and you go around the corner of this aisle in section L or D or whatever the fuck the letter was. And there's no cameras. And sure as fuck, bro, 3 days later, that was all over the fucking news on KY3 and everything. So, yeah, man, it's a roller coaster, because I've seen the medical, the community, and like the legal aspect of it. Whereas cops will see the reactionary side of it and maybe the interviewing side. Whereas medical will probably see the after effects of things, or the aftermath. Whereas the schools or the community doesn't know fucking shit.
Right.
And like, it's difficult, because for me to sit here and talk to you about that and not say, hey, if this happens, how would you react to it? Like, people don't get that. And people also just don't respect the fact, like we said before, it goes back to the same thing. Like, people don't respect the fact that you need the interpreter. Because think about it, how the fuck would you understand what that person is saying if you wouldn't have had an interpreter?
Yep.
And that's where like it ties in for me, where like that's why now I just like advocate for it, and I just hang out with my wife and my kid, man, go to jiu-jitsu and do podcasting interviews. Like that's what I do now, because it's just too many years of that shit, man. And I think you see, for me personally, I saw so many, because there's still ones that I haven't talked about, because I don't know if they're clear or not, and I don't have a way to like see if they're clear. That like, I don't understand how people wouldn't have a fucking sense of urgency to talk to your kids about not good or bad people, but tricky people.
Yeah.
Right? Like, people always say good or bad. Like, dude, almost every case that I had was a fucking family member. Like a fucking family member.
Yeah.
And like, that's why I tell people, like, teach your kids about tricky people. Not good or bad people, tricky people.
That's a good angle.
Yeah, like that's one of the things that I learned from all of that is teach your kids about tricky people. Like, here's one thing that I do with my kid, right? I tell my kid to watch your drink everywhere. Watch your drink. And what I do is when she leaves the room and she's drinking, I fucking pour her drink out. I'm like, go get another drink. But what I'm trying to instill is that years later, when you're grown up, you're going to fucking have a habit of doing this or paying attention to your drink. Because I've seen it. That's how most people get kidnapped. That's how most people, in my experience that I saw, the experiences that I had, that's how most people got roofied. That's how most people got kidnapped.
Yep.
That's how most people got in a situation where they didn't know. All because you didn't watch your drink. Which again, I shouldn't have to. But like, this is the world we fucking live in, you know? And that's just been my experiences with it.
There was one at a club downtown. This would have been probably around 10 years ago. And girls dropped off at the bar, gets a drink, and before her boyfriend has the car parked and has entered the venue, she's actually all sloppy and being walked out by two guys who got a cab, and the cab watched to see what unit they went into apartment-wise and called 911, and PD gets there, and it's two Saudi guys, and she had already been stripped naked on the bed.
Yep.
And it's like, Jesus.
Yep. I had one time that thank God for Springfield PD, man. Like people can say whatever they want about Springfield PD, but I've never had a negative fucking interaction. I actually got a ticket. I've never fucking told this story, so you'll get I've never fucking told this story, and it pisses me the fuck off. So this will be an exclusive for you. I got pulled over one day on my way to interpret for one of the child trafficking victims, and I was doing, I think, like 10 over or something. And this cop pulls me over. He goes, "You in a hurry?" And I was like, "Yeah, I gotta go interpret for a trafficking victim." And I said it so nonchalant. He goes, "Yeah, sure." And I gotta go do a magic show. And he fucking gave me the ticket and fucking left. And I was so fucking mad that when I went to court, I was like, I'm gonna fucking say it on the stand. I was like, no one cares, bro. No one gives a fuck. Yep. So I went and I paid the ticket. It's the only fucking ticket I've ever gotten in my life.
I can't.
And it was in fucking town. I have that ticket somewhere. I got the cop's name. Like, I was like, he just like, no, he's like, "Yeah, I gotta go to a magic show, bud." He's like, "Please don't speed. Have a good."
Amazing.
Real professional though. But like, again, the way that I said it was like so nonchalant. Like, I have to go interpret for a trafficking victim, a child trafficking victim. Sure, I gotta go to a magic show, bud. And the funny part was the mom, who was like the foster mom for that kid, was in the car with me. And she just stood there like not knowing what the fuck to say. Like, did this motherfucker really give you a ticket because you told him what was up? And again, I'm not law enforcement or anything, but it's like, bro, like you don't think that you should probably ask more questions? Like, oh, is that person okay? Are you being serious? Let me escort you. And then fucking next thing you know, you're like, oh shit.
That's what you would have had with me. I don't believe in revenue generation in law enforcement. I'm not a fan of that.
Oh,
yeah. And that's the ticket writers. I don't have respect for them. I'll say it to their face. I don't have a lot of respect for highway patrol because that's a lot of their job. Obviously, there's more to their job, and I do respect them for that. But anybody who's into the whole citation thing, I also believe they don't really change anything. You're essentially paying a tax to speed. Because if you can just simply pay and it goes away completely.
If I can just pay money to get out of something, then what's the point of having a rule?
Yep. And does it slow me down? No. Yeah. And when I get a ticket, I usually get pissed off and I drive more erratically for the next 20, 30 minutes.
It's the only fucking ticket I've ever gotten, bro. You can fucking look. Yeah. It's the only fucking ticket I've ever gotten in the world. And I have driven in Korea, in Japan, in Germany, in Puerto Rico, like everywhere. It's the only fucking ticket I've ever gotten.
That's crazy.
Ever, bro. Yeah, that was a wild one. I never forget. I've never told that fucking story. You gotta clip that one. Because I just like, and again, not anything bad about the cop. It's just like, it goes to show the level of like not knowing like how to react to some information that blows my mind, that it's like, dude, that could have been a simple conversation. Because if someone is willing to engage to you at that level as a cop, it's because either A, they're trying, like, I wasn't trying to show off, I was just being honest. Because I get nervous when I get pulled over. Because, dude, I pull over people. I want to see your hands. I want to see what's in the vehicle. I get that a traffic stop is one of the most dangerous fucking things in the world. I understand that. But if I'm having a fucking conversation with you, then maybe inquire a little bit.
Right.
And again, I don't know what that cop's mindset. I know he didn't mean no harm. No. But that's a teachable fucking moment there.
And he's one of those guys who's not going to care and he likes scratching tickets.
No.
And there are some out there.
Probably.
See, I had a rule that I made up on my own, and I wish all law enforcement paid attention to this, but you ask yourself 2 questions on every stop. First, did they do something illegal? Obviously, yes. You stop them, right?
You have to have
Number 2, are they putting themselves or anyone else at danger?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't answer yes to that, that's what I call a gray ticket that I don't write.
You know what I call that?
What's that?
Officer discretion, motherfuckers.
Yeah. They're like, no, I got one. It's when 60 was getting a bunch of construction going on. And for 14 days, it rained 13 of those days. Construction hadn't started. They just marked it off, right? 3 lanes wide. The construction cones are on this side. I'm doing 62 in what's normally a 60, and it was a 50 at this time, right? And I go over to the far right lane, and I'm cruising right past a highway patrolman in that right lane, the exit lane to go out on Glenstone. And she pulls me over. And she had the audacity to write on the ticket.
While it's raining?
It wasn't raining at this time.
I was going to say, bro, if you pull someone over while it's raining, you hate the fucking world or something.
What she didn't like is that I passed her on the other side, and she also just didn't like that I passed her. And she wrote on the ticket that I overcame her vehicle passing her utilizing the exit lane. I was like, okay, first off, bitch, this is my exit. You asked, where are you going? Home. It's right up here. I never pull over on the highway. If you turn on your twirlies, we're going to cruise under the speed limit until I have an exit ramp. Why? Because I'm not dying because you wanted to pull me over here, and I do it so you don't die, and I don't die, and the people hitting us don't die. I will not ever pull over on a highway. And when I'd pull people over, I'd always try and time it where they'd hit the ramp, and if they stop early, I just get on the horn, or I'll run up and tell them, hey, let's go ahead and get off the highway up here, and we'll do the stop there.
Man, that's why one of the things that I tell people, like for me, like the biggest part of educating law enforcement's awesome, but law enforcement isn't everywhere. And like one of the things that I tell people is like I always like educating like the basic community, like the community is like, you know, who are the people that are most likely going to run into shit? It's going to be your everyday people, your barbers, your servers, your hotel managers, the people in the food industry, and people in the entertainment industry. There's other people who are going to run into the possibility of like running into someone who's in danger, running into someone who needs help. Like, dude, I had a friend of mine that called me a while back that, I never forget this, he works at a hotel. And he was like, hey, I just had this little girl approach me saying that she's getting trafficked. She spoke English. I go, bro, pull that kid to the side, call 911, tell them what you said, get a good description of the girl. If you can get a picture of the girl, get a fucking picture of the girl. And dude, sure as fuck, they fucking arrested a guy in town too. They arrested a guy at a hotel who had like a bunch of cameras set up, and fucking the girl was like 15 or 14 or some shit like that. So like those are the people that I feel like law enforcement, it's important that they understand, because obviously they're out on the street, you know, they're doing stuff. Unless you're like me and you don't fucking go anywhere. But the common person, like bars, hotels, food service places, grocery stores, because guess what everybody has to do? Everybody has to drink, shit, and eat. Gas stations, you gotta get gas. So those are the people that I always say, man, like if you, because the problem with Missouri is that it's a pass-through state, right? This is why I say like trafficking was so high, and it probably is so high, I don't know. But I can hit Springfield, Missouri with a bunch of hotels, and if something happens, I can be on 60, 66, 65, 44, or I can be in fucking Arkansas in less than an hour, or I can be in Oklahoma in less than 2 hours. Oh, hey, guess what? I can go up north and I can be in another state. Oh, in 4 hours, I can be in Illinois. So now you've lost connection. Like that's what people don't understand, is that pass through cities is one of the biggest things that traffickers and like drug dealers, anybody who's doing bad things, they like, right? Yep. And that's one of the things that I always tell people is like, those are the people that I wish I could touch more. Because I guarantee you, like truckers have a thing called Truckers Against Trafficking, TAT, that they do great job, and they have training for their truckers and everything. One of my friends is a truck driver, and he's called in stuff that he's seen. Like, hey, this looks wrong. It's a little girl, this. He doesn't know what happened, but he calls it in. Yeah. And that's like the thing that I aim to do nowadays is just educate, because...
Can we do that? Let's dive into things that people should be looking for.
Yeah.
Like what are the signs? So and some of the nitty gritty that may not be, like people have the basic cliches, and that's really it.
If I see a kid alone in the street, I immediately, like, my radar goes up, number one. Because back in the day when we were kids, that was like a thing, right? You'd see kids out. But if I see a kid out in the street, I look for, number one, any marks. I look at their clothing. I look at what they're doing. Like if you see a kid out in the street and he has an electric scooter, right? You're probably not going to be worried. You're like, okay, you probably just went from home a little too far away and you're out and running, right? If I see a group of kids, clothing's a big thing.
Clothing and markings, what are you looking for?
Clothing and marking, anything. Like, do they have bruises? Are they covering up, you know, are they doing this, you
sleeves in the summer
like sleeves in the summer and shit like that. Do they look overly dressed with the person that they're with. An example, they're with someone that's in shorts and in a button-up shirt and flip-flops, and they're dressed like, you know, like with makeup and everything.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I tell people. And again, this doesn't necessarily mean that that's what it is, because there are situations that people just dress like that.
That might
Some
say you're walking through a casino in Vegas.
Yeah, don't even get me started with casinos, man. Casinos have gotten better security nowadays, though, so law enforcement has gotten better because casinos have facial identification and all this other shit now. Another thing is listen to what the child says. What type of language does the child have? Is the child speaking about subjects that they probably shouldn't say? Is the child overtly like...
What do you mean by
like, that? Okay, should a kid be talking about my tits itch, or like my tits this, or my genitals this and that? Or, hey, your groin looks like this, or hey, you know... And again, I know I have a friend who has 2 boys. And bro, those boys will be like, hey, do you know what the capital of Thailand is? And they'll punch you in the dick. You know what I'm saying? The situation doesn't apply to everywhere.
Right.
But just pay attention to it. Because you might see one thing that looks out of whack, but then you see, again, what's the rule in law enforcement? The rule of what? The rule of 3. So if I see 3 things that are out of whack, I make a phone call. Don't really give a fuck. I'll identify myself. I'll tell you who the fuck I am. And I always tell people 3 things that seem off. Clothing, markings, how do they react to people, right? Do they speak the language? That's another thing. So what I always tell people is when you give information to police, who, what, when, where, how, why, right? Who did you see? What did you see? Where did you see it? When did you see it? Who, what,
when, where, and why.
When, where, why. Why were you in that area? Why was that person there? Did you ask them? Right? Who, what, when, where, how, and what? Yeah, what? Who, what, when? Yeah. Who did you see? Where did you see? Why did you see it? How did you see it? Where? Yeah. So basically, if you can answer those things, right? And I'll break it down even more simpler. Is if I'm looking at you, right? And this is a good exercise that people can practice. Obviously, you may not be able to tell me how tall you are, but when you're standing up, I could say, hey, he was taller than that Marshall amp there. Yeah. Hey, his hairline touched the tip of that right there. So now I have a basis to look at that I can go, hey, when he was walking, was his head below? Oh, you know what? When he walked by the door, his head was like up to here, right? Mm-hmm. What was he wearing? He was wearing a black shirt. Did the black shirt say anything? Oh, it said productive defense something. And it was like gray. Okay, did he have a watch? He had a shiny silver watch that had some blue in it. Oh, okay. Well, what type of shoes did he have? He had some black flip-flops on. Right. Okay, did he have facial? Oh, he had facial hair. His hair was brown. His eyes were this. Oh, did he have any rings or any markings? Oh, he had a silver ring on his left middle finger. Like, shit like that. People just don't practice it.
Right.
Like, they just don't practice it. So that's the thing that I tell people. And then the other thing is location. Where are we? Are we in a hotel? Are we in a public setting? Are we in a party? Like, where are we? Like, location's very important, because if we're at a hotel and I see an adult showing up with a kid, and like me, thank God, I'm always like messing around with my kid and whatnot, and she's like, Dada, what are we doing? And the kid's overtly shy. And the guy's like, here's another one that I saw a lot of traffickers do this, is replying for the child.
Yes.
I fucking hate that.
Yeah.
I hate parents who do that. I fucking hate parents who do that. Because what that tells me is that you may not be a trafficker, but you have some sort of insecurity that you have to control what your kid says. I'm not fucking talking to you. I'm talking to your kid. Oh, well, he doesn't reply much. Well, let the kid fucking decide. If he doesn't reply, let it be. But, like, that's the thing that I tell people, like, are they answering questions for the kid? How are they, how are they around the kid? Are they putting their hand, what's the difference between this, and this? Mm-hmm. This looks like nice. This looks like I'm reprimanding you. This looks like I'm fucking forcing you or I'm pissed off at you. So those are things to look for. And then the other thing is, man, like, understand, like, not everything, because a lot of times people are like, oh, well, prostitution, this and that. Like, listen. A lot of the times, people who work in the sex industry and the prostitution industry, they're there by themselves. Like, that's just a thing that happens. Mm-hmm. So you have to be able to understand that not everything is trafficking. Not
Right.
not everything is smuggling. But understand that you have to be able to have some sort of basic information that you can give cops so that they can be able to then go and say, okay, here's a good description of what we have. Here's what we saw. This is where we saw it. Are there cameras in the area? For my law enforcement, are there cameras in the area? Are the people in the area, were they there the whole time? Can I have access to those cameras? Are there cameras outside? Were they left? Is there someone who maybe has, like, everybody's recording nowadays? You know how that shit is. Is it somebody record what was happening? So, like, these are all little things that I feel like you can apply to yourself, and you can go out into the world and look. And dude, just look. I tell this to interpreters all the times when I teach. Just look. Look around your house. Look around your neighborhood. I guarantee you, if you see something, you're going to see someone like, dude, I know sometimes, like, if my kid does something, I'll look at her and be like, we'll talk when we get home, you know? But, like, understand that it happens more than people fucking think.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean jump the gun, you know, and shit like that. And again, if someone approaches you and says, help me, I'm being trafficked, get that person to a safe spot immediately. As you get that person to a safe spot, tell them, tell me what's your name. I'm going to help you. Don't say you're going to be safe, because you can't promise fucking shit. You can't promise shit, because if the cops talk to the guy, which this has happened before, I've had cops tell me this. I talked to the guy, looked normal, and then later on, a week later, fucking it was trafficking. And I fucking had talked to the guy. It didn't look out of the ordinary. Like, just tell the person, I'm going to help you. Don't say I'm going to keep you safe or whatever. Don't make, again, just like in an interrogation, don't make fucking promises you can't keep. So that's what I tell people. I'm going to help you. And let's go ahead and remove you from the situation in a spot where no one else, you know, we have a couple of people with. Let's call 911 immediately, and let's get what we need recorded, because that's the good thing about 911. You know, it's recorded and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then just let trust that the system will work. That's the best thing that I can tell you about.
For paying attention to surroundings and seeing extra details and stuff like that, a lot of people are oblivious. And one thing that helped me massively is when I was a kid, I was reading a children's book that my cousin Mark had. So it's made for way younger than I was, but it was a book about police and detectives. And at one point, it's in this convenience store, and it talks about this interaction. Then you flip the page, and it says, what was the guy at the register wearing?
Yeah.
What was the color of his shirt? Did he have any jewelry on?
Yeah.
What was the color of his hat?
So you can do that.
And I couldn't remember any of those things. And I flipped back. That was a mind-boggling, eye-opening
because you don't pay
teaching
attention.
point. Yeah. And boy, that turned my world around. And it's probably a big part of the reason why
I tell people all the time, do it at your house.
Oh, yeah.
And this is due to, I used to interpret for a marriage therapist in town. Learned a lot from that dude that to this day helped me. And one of the things that he was telling me when I was explaining to him these things, he goes, oh, you can do that in your marriage. Like, tell me what your wife wore yesterday. And I was like, this and this. He goes, oh, so you pay attention. I go, bro, there's not a time that I'm not looking at my wife. If my wife walks by me, the Call of Duty game that I have is fucked. Boys, we're losing this game. The wife just walked past me. We are fucked. Pay attention.
Yeah.
What is your wife wearing? Describe what you're wearing. Describe what you saw the person at the coffee shop wear.
Yeah.
Like, describe it in your head. These are things that you can do, that you can actively be able to create a pattern of who, what, when, where, how, why. Or even in the military, like we say, like, hey, you know, the 5W, the 5-6Ws is good, but also, like, understand, like, just be calm about it. The biggest thing that I tell people, and this is what I always tell people about mental health, is when stress starts hitting you, people tend to get tunnel vision. And the reason they get tunnel vision is, number one, is lack of experience, which that happens. It's like in jiu-jitsu. Like, when you're fighting someone, like, within, like, the first 2 minutes, I can tell how the round's going to go depending how you grab me. Because if you're, like, grabbing me, you're, like, seizing up, like, bro, we are not at Worlds. And if we're going to fight like it's Worlds, like, we're going to fucking fight like it's Worlds. But just understand, like, practice these things. And it's things that you can do every day. Breathing exercises are fucking phenomenal.
Yeah.
I tell that to people all the time. If you don't know what Wim Hof breathing is, look it the fuck up. If you don't know what box breathing is, I do therapy sessions for, like, I go interpret for therapy sessions at Burl.
Yeah.
Because we hold the Burl contract. Which, shout out to them. They've been great to me lately, and the psychologists that they have I've gotten the chance to explain to a couple other psychologists like what it's like to use an interpreter, and they're glad about it. They explain box breathing, and I'll explain it, and I'll just draw while I'm talking and interpreting. And you're like, oh my God, most people don't know what the fuck box breathing is. Yep. I'm like, yeah, dude, like that, they teach you that in the Army, like in and out breathing to like warm yourself up, which is like right. Like that. And the other one is 3-3-3, 3-3-3-3, which is like breathe for 3 seconds, exhale for 3 seconds, hold for breathe for 3, inhale for 3 seconds, hold for 3 seconds. Exhale for 3 seconds, hold for 3 seconds, breathe for 3 seconds, and then you go 5, 5, 5, 5, and then you go 10, 10, 10, 10. And if you can do that, you have pretty good lung capacity. But that's how you're able to relax. Like I had a party trick that I do. Joseph knows this trick. I did it to Joseph, where I'll tell people like breathing's important. Watch, and you'll put a blood pressure machine on me. And I did this to Joseph, and I fucked with him. And I was like, okay, put it on. And he's like, okay. And it's this reading. I go, watch this. Just give me 1 minute. And then he put it again, and it was like 30 points below. And Joseph's like, what the fuck? And it's like, it's just breathing. It's just little things that you can do to be able to calm yourself down. Yep. Because if not, man, like when you're flooded with emotions, you know, your judgment is clouded because you're in survival mode. And if you're not used to that, you know, the number one thing is just breathe. Yeah. Like, just fucking breathe, bro.
I used to field train new hires in a loss prevention company out in LA. And it's all the Pendleton guys coming in and working those jobs. And it was always exciting when we're catching our first guy. And I'd call him on the phone. It's like, come over here, aisle 13, and start watching with your cart with how I'm not going to give away the tactics on that. But so they get to where they can start watching. It's like, now I want you to start taking slow, deep breaths, because now that you're seeing this happen and they're watching the guy steal right in front of them, you're going to take it personally. It's not personal.
Yeah.
So don't worry about that. Yeah. Don't get mad. Don't get flustered. And just start focusing on slow, deep breaths. And, dude, the guys, after we're finally done with that, the guys packed up, handed over to LAPD and everything, they're just on cloud 9. It's like, dude, I can't believe, like, I started trembling like this, like
fight or flight.
And so you start teaching them that, and their mind is blown how well that works. And same thing, buck fever, a kid going hunting for the first time, and they see that deer walk out, and they start shaking and trembling like a slow, deep breaths, buddy.
Yeah, you know? Yeah. It's just a lot of thing too. Is I tell people all the time, is like, where are your feet? And it sounds dumb, but I ask my kid all the time, and she's like, Dada, I'm anxious, or not anxious. She doesn't even know what the fuck that word means. She's like, Dada, I'm excited, you know? Yeah. And I'm like, okay, where are your feet? I was like, at home. Okay, then we're at home. Like, we're at home. Like, where the fuck are your feet right now? Okay, and then if we have a long staking process, you know, let's take it one step at a time, 1 minute at a time, sometimes 1 fucking second at a time, sometimes 1 meal at a time, bro. Yeah. Like, I know that I got to eat at this time. Cool, I'm going to be fed at that time from this time to this time. Whatever iteration I have to do, I'm going to fucking deal with that. That's one thing that helped me get through basic and a lot of stuff in Iraq too was, okay, I know we're going to eat at some point. Mm-hmm. So whenever we eat, I enjoy it. And then you see videos of me just fucking chowing down on a whole chicken and shit because I'm pissed off. But yeah, man, that's just what I tell people a lot of times. Just take care of yourself and be aware of what's in your community, who's in your community. That doesn't mean be an asshole. It just means be aware. Because people are going to reveal who the fuck they are at the end of the day. And that's one of the things why I just sometimes, like, I just sit back and I just look at it. It's like, okay, cool. Like, let's see how this interaction unfolds. And a lot of times it's nothing. A lot of times it's just, you know, my dad has a saying. He's like, when you've seen so much, it's really difficult to not, like, apply the negativity that you've seen to your own life, in the sense of, right, oh, this could go so bad because I've seen this. It's like, well, it's not there yet. Like, it's not there yet at all. So let's calm down. And that's the thing that as a parent, you know, with a daughter, like, that's one thing that I'm, like, real finicky about. Like, who the fuck is around my kid? You know, like, who's this teacher? What's your name? And some people see that and they're like, oh, that's so manipulative. No, motherfucker, that's my kid. Because you haven't seen a quarter of the shit that I have seen. Right. And if you have seen it and you don't think that that's okay, then you need to reassess how the fuck you're thinking. Because I want to know who the fuck is around my kid. I have a right as a fucking parent to know. It's my fucking kid. So I always tell people, like, just know who's around you. Interact with people. If you don't want to interact with someone because you don't like them, cool. Just don't fucking interact.
Trust your instincts on that around people.
Yeah.
Like when your body's telling you something, that's called a clue. It doesn't mean you're always right about it, but take note of it. I was at a sheriff's office and I reported directly to the guy who's second in command. And I get a call one night that he was arrested for molestation of his stepdaughter.
Fuck.
At this time, she was 16, 17 years old, and everything took place when she was like 11 to 13. And this wasn't said to me, but another friend of mine who was working there told me about this conversation. The highway patrolman who was coming in and running the investigation on that, he said, after reviewing these cases, the only thing I know when I walk into a room is I know for a fact that I'm not a child molester. And I don't know about anyone else.
Right? Yep.
And
I can say that. Yep. That's one thing that I tell people is like, just be careful, man. Just be fucking careful. Just be careful. And like the biggest threat that I've always seen, like I always tell people, like, and this is something that people like hate a lot, like, you don't need to post pictures of your fucking kid online. I had an attorney one time tell another parent that I was interpreting for, they're like, well, he doesn't post pictures of his kids. That means he doesn't love him. Fuck you, bitch. What fucking purpose other than me stroking my ego? Oh, to share with family members. Send them a fucking text.
Dude,
send them a fucking text.
The beach and pool pictures in the summer, posting your daughters half naked, it blows
not even
my
that.
mind.
It's just kids don't need to be on fucking social media. Snapchat. Why the fuck does Snapchat have a feature where the fucking picture disappears after a set amount of hours?
Right.
Who the fuck is that for? That's fucking weird. That's fucking weird.
Dude,
so my whole thing is like, kids don't need to be on fucking social media.
No.
Like, I told this to someone one day who was like challenging that. They're like, well, I post pictures of my kid all the time. That's all. Oh, well, I have friends on my social media. Okay. And if that friend is friends with someone else and they comment on something, oh, well, I have it blocked. Okay, I'll give you another example. Let's say that they save that picture and they just want to send it to a friend. Like, no, your kid doesn't belong on fucking social media. If you want to do it, more power to you. That's on you. Just understand that I've sat across motherfuckers who literally have said that are chomos, that they sit across fucking Facebook and they'll fucking look at people's pictures, at people's kids' pictures. To me, that's okay, cool. My kid has no need of being on social media. No fucking need whatsoever. Some people don't like that. That's absolutely fine. Just understand that I've been in those situations where I've had to interpret for those people. And to me, it's like, let me share that wisdom. You want to do it? You want to post pictures? My kid goes to this school. Who gives a fuck? Bro, that's why I say, like, nowadays, like, people are too fucking comfortable. Because if I fucking hate a motherfucker and I was, like, unhinged, I will know everything about you by going on Facebook. Yeah. Most people that I have on Facebook didn't even know that I was a parent. Some people might look at it like, oh, you're trying to hide something. Sure. You look at it like that. My kid does not need to be on fucking social media. Doesn't.
I'm in a cop group, and they're a training company, and they do a lot of specified training. And one thing that they'll do, like once a week or a couple times a week, they post a random picture from social media from someone, and they say, give me the GPS coordinates where this photo is taken. And
yeah, because you can do that. Yeah.
And tell me if you can get this person's phone number. Yep. Like, what all information can you give me?
Don't give out your phone number.
Yeah, and you got like 100 dudes.
HIPAA. I'll give you an example.
This stuff in no
I'll give
time.
you an example, right? When I started doing the medical interpreter training, I tell people all the time, like, there are, I think it's 18 to 19 things, and I need 3 of them for me to be able to do anything. If I have 3 of those things, I can do anything. Yeah. Your full legal name, your date of birth, which is stupid. Like, I never post my date of birth. Right. I have a different date that I post. Yep. So the real one, everybody else leaves me alone. And only my real friends know the real one. Because why the fuck do people need to know? First of all, fuck you. It's my birthday. I don't want to fucking hang out with anybody on my birthday. You know what I want to do on my birthday? I want to get my dick sucked. I want to have dinner. And I want to be left the fuck alone on my birthday. That's it. And I want to spend time with my kid while it is my fucking birthday.
Wasn't it insane, the phishing information that people will post on their Facebook?
It's easy.
Year you were born, What was your high school mascot? These are your bank security questions, you moron.
But not only that, that's 3 things that I have now that I can access anything about you. Yep. And for HIPAA, why do you think when you go to a pharmacy they say, "Can I see an ID?" Because your ID has 3 things about you that I need.
Yeah.
Has your name, your date of birth, and an address. Dude,
yeah.
I don't give that shit to people. Fuck you.
What's
like from the bottom of my heart, people ask for my number. You can message me on Facebook.
Yeah.
But my number, fuck you.
Yeah.
Pay me. You can message me on fucking Facebook. You don't need to have my number.
Dude, my favorite one where people feel safe and they should see through it. Another Facebook one that was simpler was what's your porn name? And it is your first pet's name and the street you grew up on.
Those are the little those were actually like, if I recall correctly, back in like 2015, those were real huge. And I remember I was like, I saw that and a cop was like, "Yeah, man, this is just like a good way for you to like talk to people and like be able to like find their information."
Yeah.
Like that's why I just kind of like laugh. Like it's like, how are we giving that information away so easily? But we don't understand. And again, you can't protect from everything because obviously we live in a society. Right. We all want to share. We all do interviews. We do podcasts. But try to protect as much information as you can about yourself because you don't know who the fuck is out there. And look, Missouri, they got hacked. Like Missouri got hacked, and there's a bunch of people's informations out there that people haven't like figured out.
When what's the group, the hacker group, Anonymous? Mm-hmm. They were mad about a case how it was being handled where a guy who had some sexual act with a girl, he was basically going to be let off easy. And with that, they just went full-blown on attack on law enforcement in Missouri, the hacked Missouri Sheriff's Association site, and gave every bit of information, Social Security, everything, the entire system. And if you were a cop in Missouri at the time, there's about a 70% chance that everything was then posted to the internet from that.
Yeah, man, and that's the problem is that your information is pretty readily available. Mm-hmm. That's why I've tried lately to aim to have a less footprint. I have a show and I have a podcast and all that, but at the same time, it's like when you're in the entertainment industry, in the comedy business, the interpreting business, and business in general, where you're selling services, you have to be able to have some sort of information that you give out. So it's really difficult, but at the same time, like, be smart about this dumb shit you do. You know, but yeah, man, that's just how I feel about that.
Yep. I'm gonna take another bathroom break. Mm-hmm. You want one this time?
I'm good, brother.
Man, I got a tiny tank. It's good shit so far, dude. I'm liking the direction. I love this Monster energy drink ad I left sitting out here. I noticed that about 30 minutes ago. I hadn't even caught on to it sitting there. Yeah, that company Street Cop. Have you heard of them? Street Cop Training? Mm-hmm. Really good stuff. They all get on stage and drop F-bombs throughout their training and everything, cuss like sailors, and just dive direct into subjects. They touch disturbing gray areas that people are where they're afraid to go, and rather than doing, it's like a lot of law enforcement training is focused on safe, simple for legal reasons. You're not getting good training from that.
Safe, simple for legal reasons.
You know, it's just dry to the point, and it's just, here's the same mundane basic message. And you'll see that in firearms training too. It's flat-footed, standing, very basic, just entry level, and everything is just so basic and entry. And that's one thing I liked about that company is they combated that and started making stuff interesting where you're really learning the nitty-gritty.
Well, the thing is, a lot of times insurance companies have a say in that, unfortunately.
Right.
That's one of the issues why cops nowadays it's a little bit different. And I mean, there's a million other things that we can touch upon, like society and shit like that, but a lot of times insurance companies, that's just the way it rolls. It's because the fucking insurance company wants it that way.
Yep.
So, yeah. What else you got from me, brother?
Let's do the last 2 things I really want to touch on would be mental health and comedy.
Not much on comedy, because I do like private stuff now where I'll go somewhere and I'll just like do like a set for free. Mm-hmm. Or like I'll sit down and like I'll grab a mic and like I'll go to like a friend's house and I'll be like, hey, I got like 10, 15 people coming over, and like that's what I've been doing with it. So it's not really much, because unfortunately, like the open mics and stuff like that, like they're great and I have to do them, but unfortunately, like they're late at night, I got to put my kid to bed. I want to be around my kid. So I have to choose between getting better at comedy through open mics, or I have to choose through going to a friend's house and just telling jokes and trying to write out something that I have, or going to Leonard Wood and going to a company I used to be with and be like, hey, can I do like, go talk to you guys for 20, 30 minutes. And a lot of times it's just me like just talking to them and stuff like that. So comedy has been in the back burner, unfortunately, for some time because I want to be a good parent, man. And like some comics, they don't get that. A lot of comics, I have a comic that every time he sees me, he goes, the most inconsistent open micer. And I'm like, this kid's like 20 something, like doesn't have kids or anything. I'm like, I can't wait to see you until you have kids. Because you're going to have to make a decision. You're going to have to make a decision. Do you want to be a parent or do you want to be a comic? Like, that's a really hard one to do. Because do you want to be out and about and traveling and all this shit? Because let me tell you, I know of comedians who are huge. Josh Blue, Ian Edwards, fucking Paulie, and all these other guys that they say it. It's like, dude, if I had a kid, it would be very fucking difficult. And like that's the choices that I've had to make with comedy is like I just go whenever I have a chance, I'll go and hit stage time. I'd love to do more stuff, but the problem is that people, the comedy scene is very cliquey. It doesn't matter where you go. It does not matter where the fuck you go. It's very cliquey. And I understand why. Because you're working with someone that you have to basically travel with them and you have to be around them and all that shit. But to me, comedy is one of those things that I will continue to do until the day that I die, because it really helps me be able to write down something. And if I can, I normally say, if I can make fun of something, then I'm not as pissed off about it.
Yeah, that's
like,
fair.
That's just where comedy is for me right now. Not much I can tell you other than go to an open mic. Like, going to comedy shows is great, but if you want to support someone, go to a fucking open mic. People don't do that. People just don't do that. And it's because comics also, the problem they have is they don't like promote open mics as often. They don't they just don't promote it as often.
I feel like they don't want to, as it's a place they're working out material.
Well, but the thing is it doesn't fucking matter. Like like you have to have a crowd in order to be able to do that. Because if not, it's just comedians trying to listen to other comedians shit. Right. And a lot of times it's like I'm there to tell jokes that I wrote. I want to know if it works. If it works, cool. If not, let's go. If there's something there, then I'll elaborate. I'll come back and I'll write.
And a crowd of comedians is very different than a crowd that's not comedians.
It's very different. Just how watching comedy after you start like getting into comedy is very different, because you're trying to figure out how did he get from point A to point B, right? A premise, a setup, and a punchline. That's a joke. And then a tag, which basically like would be an extra laugh. So how did you get from this thought process to set me up like this, to make me laugh like this, to fucking make me laugh again, right? Mm-hmm. So like that's one of the things that I tell people is that comedy is very, very difficult, but it's like anything else, just like jiu-jitsu, just like learning a language. Like you have to be able to write the letters and then combine the letters and learn words, and then do phrases, and then do paragraphs, and then do sentences, and then do this, and then do that. So to me, comedy is just one of those things that for now has not been the priority for me.
Has comedy been a release for you in ways?
Oh yeah.
From darkness.
Oh yeah. Well, because at the end of the day, it's important to understand that there's not many things in life that I wouldn't make a joke about. There's certain things that I don't, because it's like, I don't want to do it. It doesn't feel right to me. And a lot of times, like, yeah, you can tell a joke and you get a laugh, but is that going to be like who you are, you know? Like, that's one thing that I've come to learn being around great comics like Ian Edwards is like, what type of jokes are you writing? Are you trying to say something interesting to get a laugh, or do you just want to get a laugh? Because you just want to just get a laugh, just tell dick jokes, just do that. Like, there's a million ways you can do it. But a lot of the comics that I know are good, they're very relatable, and they have things that are very personal. So that's one of the things that I've come to learn. Like, a lot of my jokes, like I have a 3, a 5, and a 10-minute set. That those jokes are tried and tried out. That's all I have. And literally, like, I can tell you from the start of my bit to the end of my bit where a laugh should happen. And if a laugh shouldn't happen, then I know where I need to take and navigate that in order for me to be able to go and to reach this end point. So it's very difficult, like very difficult. So that's just what comedy is for me right now. It's been on the back burner for right now. There's much more better people to talk to about that, man.
Well, I'm interested in talking to you because it sounds like
Yeah.
you're clearly a next step from where I've ever been. But I've had an obsession with comedy. I've always liked comedy. I was a late bloomer in discovering it. And when I lived in LA, I was around a bunch of actors and everything. Of course, a lot of actors are trying stand up as well. So I went to like 3 or 4 open mics there. I lived right next to, oh, I can't remember the name of it now. I've heard it referenced a lot, but it's like 3 initials. But the one I went to all the time was owned by Andy Dick. And I guess it's one where a lot of SNL people have got their start going there. And I never jumped in, and I'd watch these people do this. And there's people like, I can do better than that. And then you put pen to paper, and you start realizing the
3
reality.
minutes isn't 3 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I spoke for a fucking minute.
Yep.
Like,
And
try getting 4 laughs a minute.
yeah. So I've been a closet writer for years where I'll write stuff down and everything. And I've always been afraid to kind of do that next level. And I finally did run down to the Blue Room and go to an open mic in the middle of winter last year because I remember I was freezing my butt off walking back to the car. And it was cool finally actually seeing that and seeing the community. But then like I even tried chatting one of the guys and we had a mutual connection and kind of got blown off and he just walked away. And that was, put a bad taste in my mouth. And there's that clicky stuff you're talking about right there. But I, in the darkest time of my life, discovered Kill Tony. And that show kept the momentum in my life.
Do you watch it regularly?
Every day, or every week.
Every week?
And I
Have you
started
ever
doing
seen
the
John
backlog.
Horner?
I'm not sure on that one.
He's the guy that has cerebral palsy.
Okay.
He's there regularly. He's a friend of mine.
Oh, that's cool.
If you ever want to have that guy's a wild
Yeah.
fucking card. He's a wild card. Like, John is just a wild fucking card, bro. But he's very funny. I think a lot of it is he just gets in his own head and he gets, very nervous about things. But John's like, we've had him like, he came from Texas to visit his family, and then he came to our podcast December 26th to do it. Like,
that's cool.
Yeah, John's a real. He's my interactions with John have always been good, and I text him regularly and shit like that. But yeah, man, comedy is just one of those things that it's like you just have to keep doing it, and a lot of it is like opportunity. When the opportunity comes, are you going to be able to do it? That's why one of the things that I have is, which is very repetitive. It's like a 3, a 5, and a 10. Mm-hmm. That's what I have, and I've tried it out enough over the years that I know, like, this is a set. It's relatable. And then from there, I've just tried to build upon those same jokes, try to keep building a story, or not even a story, try to keep building jokes upon those jokes.
Where it flows.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It takes a long time, bro. Like, most comics don't break out until, like, their 10-year mark. Yeah. Nowadays, you have guys that are breaking out at their 2, 3, 5-year mark. But again, there's so much information out there on how to write jokes, how to be approachable, how to find your voice, how to do things that people are now understanding how to do that. Some people go to comedy because they want to get into entertainment and they think they're funny. Some people get into comedy because they want to be able to be more creative and just be able to express themselves better. Other people get into comedy because they want to be famous. For me, comedy is just an avenue where I can like write and do well writing. But at the end of the day, I say well, but it's like I have to still go and put that time in and be on the stage and go. And the other thing is you have to understand crowds. Like anybody who is in comedy, like I had this conversation with Ian Edwards when we went to see him in Dallas a few weekends ago, where I was like, do you think crowds is a thing? He goes, absolutely. He goes, would you tell a bunch of dick jokes to like 80 something year old people? Like, no, you have to be able to talk about things that are relatable. That's how comics are. But like that's the thing is like if you can't have a conversation about certain things, certain people, like then you're just gonna have a specific group, and that's fine. There's comics who make a living like that, like Kill Tony is a roasting. It's just about roasting. That is what Kill Tony is, a master of his craft at, is roasting, and he's made a fucking living out of it, bro. Like who could not say that Kill Tony's not a master roaster and an amazing comic? So that's the thing is like just understanding like where you're at and what you're trying to do. And nowadays, man, there's so many opportunities. Like you can get on Kill Tony nowadays. You just have to like go down to Dallas. You can get on the list for the mothership. You just have to be there. So there's opportunities out there. You just have to go chase them. Me, unfortunately, I've chosen to concentrate on my wife and my kid. Because you got to understand, man, like, I don't have family here. Like, where the fuck is my family? My mom, my dad, my grandparents are in Puerto Rico. My nana and my uncles are in Texas, past Waco. So, like, I'm alone. So it's like I have to literally, like, be around my people.
Right.
Which is my wife and my kid. And that's what I've chosen to do over a lot of other things. That's why a lot of times, like, I used to work 24/7 and you know, like, it wasn't healthy. Because, like, the PD would call at 1 a.m. for a traffic stop that they just needed clarification, right? Which had happened a couple times. And then my wife would get mad because I'd bill people and nothing ever came through. And that was, like, a big part of why I stopped, like, doing all of these things, because it was like, there's no money coming through. And, like, yeah, I have other sources of income and stuff like that. But, like, dude, I want to get paid for what I do. And it's one of the reasons why when I started doing podcasts, like, I said that in the Big interview, and Big asked me. He's like, how much money do attorneys in Missouri owe you? I go, I have all of them, bro. All of them. Because I have all those fucking invoices. And what I wish I would have known that somebody told me is, like, just 1099 them. If you 1099-C or something like that, then that's money that they owe you that they made, but they never paid you. And you can fuck somebody's fucking credit like that. So it's one of those things that I always tell people, like, when I started deciding to take care of my family and my mental health, people started making comments or saying, right, oh, well, you just don't care about the kids. Well, you just don't care about helping. Well, it's about the money. Well, you know what, fucker? Yeah, I got bills to pay. I got child support to pay, motherfucker. Are you going to pay it? You know what I'm saying? So that's one of the reasons why, like, when I started talking about mental health, like, people took that for weakness, when all it was is, like, nah, man, like, do you know all the stress that comes along with interpreting? And on top of that, I'm not getting paid. Like, I didn't. To this day, bro, I don't make enough through interpreting for me to, I thank God that, you know, we have our VA stuff, and, you know, my wife works and stuff like that, and we're in a position where we try to have minimal bills. Most of our money goes to food. But, like, dude, like, how would you feel if you were in that position? You wouldn't be fucking pissed that people owe you money when you literally help save someone? So to me, that was one of the reasons why I was very sour with the legal community and stuff like that. And I chose to start going the medical route, because through the medical route, bro, it's through insurances. You want to fuck with the insurance and the insurance not pay you? Good luck. Tell me how that's going to work. Because, dude, insurance companies don't fuck around. They don't want problems. They don't want fucking problems, because it's all legal there. It's all legalese there. So that's why I tell people, man, like, take care of yourself. And, like, I feel like a lot of people, when they hear take care of yourself, they think, like, oh, you know, it's one of those things that it's like, oh, it's just another dude trying to tell me. No, motherfucker. Like, what that means is eat. Like, eat what you need to eat, you know? Drink fucking water. Like, simple fucking things. Go for a walk. If you don't want to go for a walk, then play a video game. There's so many things that I do that prevent me. And this is what I say, and I always say this in any interview, like, find something that helps you not burn the fucking world down.
Yeah.
I said that to an interpreter years ago. And then I think recently she came to me, she goes, oh my God, thank you, I understand it now. Because when you said it, I was like, ugh, what's wrong with that guy? And then she lost a parent. And she, like, didn't get what I was saying. And I'm like, look for it. It could be that cup of coffee. It could be that I had the coldest drink ever. It could be that I had a glass of water. It could be that I'm with a new friend hanging out. It could be that my homie texted me saying, hey, man, hope you're doing okay, brother. Love you, fucker. Like, little things like that help you not burn the world down. And I say it like that because there's a lot of us that are very fucking close to the edge. That all it listen, Ian Big told me this. He's like, there's a lot of people who are just one step away from being in prison. Think about that. All it takes is one step. All it takes is one step. There's people who are one step away from being in prison. So that's why whenever I talk about mental health, and I say this to all the interpreters, you know, Gustavo's one that he loves that I talk about this, because every class I do like 10 minutes. So, like, for me, you know, jiu-jitsu is what helps me, like, not burn the world down. Because I walk around pretty fucking confidently knowing that I can shoot you from a distance, I can shoot you up and close, and if you want to go hands-on or you want to use knives, I'm very comfortable with both. I've already been stabbed. I've already been spit on. Like, it's you're gonna stab me one time,
Yeah.
and if you stab me multiple, then after that, like, we're gonna have a different conversation. And again, it's also about avoidance, because de-escalating is the best thing that you can do. Like, that's why I don't go around looking for problems, but I'm also not scared if a problem comes, because at the end of the day, like, I understand that everyone in this fucking world has a capacity for violence. The thing is where are you mentally that's going to help you not do that, right? And that's what I tell people is, like, look for something. Like, for me personally, bro, I get on Xbox for at least an hour a day. For at least an hour. And I got a friend of mine, you should clip this, he would love this. I got a friend that I started playing Monster Hunter World with in 2018. I've never met this dude until a few months ago. That dude has sent me business. That dude has done business with me. That dude has sent me referrals. That dude has sent gifts to my wife, to my kid. I sent that his kid, I sent a gift whenever that dude's needed issues. And I met him like a few months ago where we drove to Myrtle Beach, and then I went to Virginia to see him. It was the first time we hung out. I've known the dude for like 7 years.
Is that the guy in Richmond?
Yeah. That's the guy who sent the picture. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's Tyler. So yeah, dude, like, and I tell Tyler all the time, dude, like, dude, find something that doesn't help you burn the world down. Cause, dude, there are people who are very fucking close to it. And I see it all the time with cops too, where like they concentrate heavily on drinking or sarcasm and shit like that. And it's like, bro, like, you're not the baddest person in the world, bro. I'm not the baddest person of the world. Like, jiu-jitsu is a great example because it's a great equalizer and a great humbler. Like, look up Kyle Terra, bro. I've rolled with Kyle twice, and both times I felt helpless. Like, fucking helpless. And that dude looks like a baby Abercrombie model. Like, I fucking shit you not. Kyle Terra, I say this all the time. I said it to Kyle's face. Kyle Terra looks like a baby Abercrombie model if he never fucking aged. That's what Kyle Terra looks like. And he will fuck you up any day of the week. Any time of the week, any day of the week. He will fuck you up. And that's the thing, is just understanding. The other part is, what I tell people is, understand where you are on the chessboard. I feel like I'm teaching the fucking classes because I explain the same exact fucking thing when I teach the interpreting class, or when I teach a class. I always take 10 minutes in the beginning to explain why interpreters are needed, and the last 10 minutes is mental health. So that's 20 minutes of my time. Yep. And like I tell people, man, like, dude, know where you are on the chessboard. Like, know where you are on the chessboard. I'll use a friend of mine as an example. Retiring soon from the military, and he already has a family, and he's like, oh, maybe I want to do like 5 more years. I go, okay, so your kid's going to be 6, and you've already missed the first few years. Whereas if you retire now, you're just probably not going to miss much because of the unit that you're in, and you've already done 21 years. So you want to put more time. Why? Because a lot of times what people don't understand is what you said that was going to make you happy years ago, you now have, but you're not happy.
Yeah. I'm not a quote person. I don't like quotes, but there's 2 that have really been a big one for me. And I used to have one on my phone because we had bought the house we had before this one. I was driving a car I loved, and I was in total darkness. And that quote was, remember when everything you currently have was everything you ever wanted.
Yeah, it's the same exact thing. Yeah.
And it's like, and that would kind of reset me a bit, but I kept kind of turning down still, and my best friend was shot and killed. And that was kind of the catalyst that put me in a hole. And Kill Tony was one of the few things kind of keeping me driving along. But I saw this video of a cop shooting, and it's taken from a person in their vehicle watching. And I believe this guy has just lost his mind. He finally went over the edge. Yeah. And he's like, I believe he is hitting some elderly people with a branch or something like that. And then he turns towards the cop and starts coming at the cop with it. Cop, I believe he fired a taser and it didn't work, and then comes out with his gun and starts just dosing this guy round after round. And this guy's just screaming. You can hear it through the closed window, him just yelling as these shots are going off. And then finally, when he drops, and he's like wearing a button-up shirt. He's a normal dude. Mm-hmm. He went over the edge. Yep. And dude, I lost it because it made me realize it wasn't but like 3 or 4 days after that, I was hugging one of my best friends who's a cop, realizing that that could be me.
Oh, yeah.
I'm close to that edge.
Yeah.
And I had been battling with this thing where I wanted to get in an argument or a fight with a cop being pulled over for a BS traffic ticket.
Yeah.
And it was in that moment when I finally was like, okay, I've got a friend, Andrew, who's been begging me to go to this program for 2 years. I'm like, dude, I'm not that bad off, and there's guys worse off than me, which is what everybody said who was in this program. And then my buddy Tom went to the program, and he was a guy I'm crying in his arms, basically telling him, dude, without saying it, like, I think suicide by cop may be something that I am considering in the background. And I said I wanted to go to the program, and I made it, went through, and dude, everybody, every single one of us, we all had our own stories, but we all had been through the same shit. It was all the same, and every one of us by day 2, we were all saying, this isn't just law enforcement, military, first responders. Everybody needs this program.
Everybody.
And it's like in cops, yeah, it's like we talk as nasty as we can. We share the craziest of stories. We all beat our chests and act like badasses and everything. Same as military, and use things like dark humor to mask that. And oh gosh, like going to that thing made me realize all these stories were just coming back to me, and realizing all these things that had an effect on my mental health. It was very damaging. And
that's why I tell people, like, going back to what I said, like, know where you are on the chessboard. If I get pulled over by a cop, I know where I am on the chessboard, bro. I'm not the king of this bitch. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know that if I, this is a great example, and people at jiu-jitsu, like, don't understand this. I go to jiu-jitsu whenever the fuck I want, right? And one of the things that I tell people is, like, if I'm not in a place where I want to go roll, I just don't. Because as much as I enjoy rolling, and as much as I enjoy just the art of jiu-jitsu and the art of fighting in general, there are times that I understand that I am not in a place where I should just go roll. Like, cause I'll fucking break something. You know, like I'll get hurt.
You'll get stupid with it.
Yeah. And like I don't hurt. Like, my goal is never to hurt people.
And you want to train with your partner, not on your partner.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Well, it's not even that. It's just then I become a partner that people don't want to train with. Because you can be an asshole to yourself and to others, and you know, I think that'll hurt. For me personally, I don't ever want to be a reason somebody fucking loses their shit or quits something, right? I always want to be a reason that someone either assesses what they're doing and goes, okay, what do I need to do so I don't end up like that? Or what do I need to do so I can follow a certain path? So that's why I tell people, like, look at where your feet at, or remind yourself where your feet at, and where are you on the chessboard. I told that to a friend of mine the other day. Like, I was like, he's like, oh man, I'm mad about this, I'm about that. Okay, I'm gonna let you talk. Okay, well, where are your feet right now? Well, I'm at home. Okay, well, being pissed off at this doesn't make sense. Why are you pissed off at it? And a lot of times when I tell people, like, why are you pissed off about something? It's something that, and again, it's some emotional reaction that you're having to an unhealed response that you didn't want to address. That's what it is 99% of the time. It's that 1%. It's like when, you know, I have this issue with my dad a lot. My dad's like, oh, that person's bad. I go, no, they're not. Because a lot of times people do things because of greed, selfishness, or money, right? Very few times in my life, in 37 fucking years walking on this earth, have I seen like people that are really evil. And I've seen them. I've seen like 2 of them that are just like, oh, you're just unhinged. Like, there is no talking to you. You're just unhinged. What you understand is violence. And most people, when they exercise violence, it's not because they want to be badass and shit. It's simply because there's something about them that they haven't healed with, that's what they want to mask it with. Whether it's sex, whether it's drugs, whether it's pills, whether it's, you know, big booty Latinas, whatever the fuck it is. You're masking something that bothers you. That's why you see me all the time. Like, I'm chill all the time. And don't get me wrong, dude, I have moments. Like, I have a lot of moments where I fucking, like, hate the world. Like, I tell my wife all the time, like, I fucking hate the world. What makes me not hate the world is being around my wife, being around my kid, you know, being around my friends and being able to do things that help me. But at the end of the day, you also have to understand, again, where I am on the chessboard, I can do that. if you're not there, then you need to understand, like, okay, this is where I'm at. How do I get here? And I use the chessboard analogy because chess is one of those things that I love a lot. And it's also like, it really is an analogy for life. Because, dude, you know, Iraq, for example, when I was in Iraq, I was like, fuck, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I got cheated on in Iraq. And I was like, fuck, what am I doing with? And I held on to that fucking anger from that fucking woman cheating on me. And then this is how I know that God has a sense of humor. I got cheated on January 9 of 2009. January 9 of 2024, I ran into her while I was with my wife and my kid at Walmart in Puerto Rico. And I was like, ah! And then I got in the car, laughed for like an hour. And then I was like, that was kind of silly of me. Like, I held on to that for all those years when it was like, have fun. Like, you could have been, absolutely, I would have made your life as not comfortable, but I would have made your life as happy as I could. But again, that's because I didn't understand where I was on the chessboard. I'm 22 fucking 100 fucking miles away, or however fucking far I was, and you're over here. And again, understanding where you are on the chessboard. That's always what I tell people. I do it on a daily basis. I have to fucking remind myself sometimes, because it's like I get fucking pissy with shit, and I go, where the fuck am I on the chessboard? Okay, what do I need to do? Well, I want to get to be a knight today. I want to go fuck somebody up. Well, I got to eat. I got to drink water. It's like, that's how you do it. And the whole don't find something that helps you not burn the world down. Bro, sometimes it's as simple as a text from the homie or from your wife. Sometimes it's as simple as, you know what, man, the cup of coffee came out real good today. Sometimes it's as simple as, I got to taste, cool water. Sometimes it's as simple as, oh my God, my book came in today. For me, a lot of times, it's the simplest of things that help. But again, that's because I've written down on a piece of paper, understood where I want to be and where I'm at. So again, you just have to understand, like, everything you said that was going to make you happy 10 fucking 15 years ago, you have it. And yet you're still fucking miserable. So then that wasn't what you wanted. That was just a need that you had to scratch that you don't really fucking need.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you didn't need all of those things. But, like, again, look at where the fuck you are on the chessboard. And I guarantee you, dude, like, a lot of times I tell that to my cop friends. I have a couple friends who are federal law enforcement. They're 1811s. And I'll talk to them, and they'll talk to me about something. I'm like, Greggy, just remember where you are on the chessboard. Like, just remember, bro, you're just at this level. There's nothing you can do, so let it go. Like, let it go. And it's hard. It's hard as fuck. But the moment you start... I always tell people this, man. Here's another one I'll give you. You have to practice how you talk to yourself the very same way that you practice, like, what you're going to say or what you're going to wear. Because if you can do that, then everything else is easy. That's why I have very little fucking anger nowadays. And it wasn't until like 3, 4, 5 years ago, I was always pissed off and shit. And it happens, don't get me wrong, because I have, PTSD is a bitch to have. But at the end of the day, I understand where it's coming from and I address it. But the thing is, like, people don't want to do that. A lot of times people just want a pill or a solution, which, don't get me wrong, pharmaceuticals are fucking great. Marijuana is a great fucking product if used smartly and correctly. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to regulate your own emotions and your thoughts the very same way you check what you eat, the very same way you check what you wear, the very same way you check how you talk to your wife and to your fucking friends, That's just how I feel about mental health, man. It's what I always tell. I feel like I'm teaching the fucking class right now.
No, I think one of my biggest issues was just overall negative mindset.
Yeah.
And negativity towards myself. You mess something up, you stupid motherfucker, you dumb cocksucker. And just out loud, like, talking shit on myself. Like, and I didn't really realize how negative that is and what that's doing to your mind and how you manifest, that kind of info.
I'll give you one an interpreter gave me. Why do you think it's called spelling? The word says it's spell, right?
That's interesting.
That one, let that one simmer.
Yeah,
you're gonna text me a couple hours later like, that motherfucker. Casting a spell, bro. Casting a spell. I use that analogy a lot. Interpreter gave me that one. I can't remember what the fuck it was. He said that's why it's called spelling and not wording, because you're spelling shit out. You're casting a spell on yourself. As silly as that might sound to people, and I'm a pretty fucking religious guy. But yeah, man, that's the thing, is like you just have to be careful. The same way that you pick your clothes and what you eat and who you hang out with and who you don't hang out with and what console you're going to be. Are you an Xbox guy? Are you a PlayStation guy? Pick your fucking thoughts. And it's hard. It's fucking hard as shit. But fucking do it. You have to. Because if not, dude, you spiral. And unfortunately, the older we get, the less of a social circle we have sometimes. And that's how people spiral out of control and people die of loneliness. Like, I've seen that. I fucking seen that. But hopefully all that shit helps you.
Yeah.
And your people, man. Hopefully that helps them too.
Well, that's all I got for today. You obviously you have a podcast.
Yes, sir.
Let's hear the pitch.
So first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's a pretty great setup. Our setup is not even an eighth of this. But if you want to find me, you can find me on Facebook under Ricardo Aviles. If you want to contact me for a consultation or for anything like that, you can email info@transinterpreting.com. Or if you want to email me personally, it's RAB as in boy, D as in Delta, E as in Echo, L as in Lima, 440@gmail.com. I'm in town, so like I do speaking engagements too on this stuff too. I schedule all that through Transinterpreting because I hate interacting when it comes to pricing and stuff like that. Like there's a set price for that. Talk to them. And then you can listen to us bullshit on the Rico podcast, which is on YouTube. It's RICO Rico podcast. And it's the two dudes that are like with a Puerto Rican flag and an American flag. And yeah, man, that's pretty much it. If you're a gamer, look me up, Havlix_Army. I will gladly play some Elden Ring or some PUBG with you, or some Yu-Gi-Oh! Too, which I still play to this day.
Nice.
But yeah, man, I appreciate you having me, dude. This has been fun.
I'm glad to have you. Thanks again.
Nah, brother.
Appreciate
Thank you, man. Thank you. Hopefully this will be useful to say. Jesus fucking Christ.
What? You got lit up?
I got fucking 700 fucking. There we go. You're tagged in something Joseph Giddens posted.
What's that?
Tell Kyle hey for me.
Oh, cool. We grew up. He actually worked at my gun shop for a while.
That's funny. I think he got fired from a gun shop for fucking smoking weed or some shit like that.
Yeah, we were in Vegas together for SHOT Show, and he had burned all of his money in coke and weed and a tattoo on night number one. Sounds like right? And so we walked past this casino bar, and it said $35, all you can drink. And so I paid his tab, and I was like, let's go.